got 7 o'clock. I would like to call to order this evening's meeting, August 1st, 2024, of the City of Nashua Planning Board. Sam, may we have a roll call, please?
Certainly. Mayor Donchis, Michael Peterson, Bob Bollinger,
Here.
Adam Varley, Maggie Harper, Alderman Klee,
Here.
Cameron Green, Dan Hudson,
Here.
Scott Leclerc,
Here.
and Larry Hirsch.
Here.
We have a quorum. Next item on the agenda, approval of minutes from July 11th, 2024. Has any member of the board had an opportunity to review the minutes and is willing to make a motion on their acceptance? Mr. Hudson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would move to accept the minutes as drafted.
All right, there's a motion by Mr. Hudson to accept the July 11th, 2024 minutes as written. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Leclerc. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm going to abstain, as I was not here.
I will abstain also. Next item on the agenda, communications. Sam?
There are none. However, I will note that the tentative agenda was updated this afternoon to reflect projects going for the September 5th Planning Board meeting.
Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda, report of chairman, committee, and liaison. Ms. Harper is not here. I don't know if any other board members have anything to report.
Nope.
Okay, seeing none. Before we move into our cases, I do want to read the planning board procedure. The procedure of the meeting is as follows. After the legal notice of each conditional, special use permit, site plan, or subdivision application plan is read by the chair, the board will determine if that application is complete and ready for the board to take jurisdiction. The public hearing will begin, at which time the applicant or representative will be given time to present an overview and description of their project. The applicant shall speak to whether or not they agree with the recommended staff stipulations. The board will then have an opportunity to ask questions of the applicant or staff. The chair will then ask for the testimony from the audience. First, anyone wishing to speak in opposition or with concern of the plan may speak. Please come forward to the microphone, state your name and address for the record. This would be the time to ask questions that they may have regarding the plan. Next, testimony will come from anyone wishing to speak in favor of the plan. The applicant will then be allowed a rebuttal period, at which time they shall speak to any issues or concerns raised by prior public testimony. After this is completed, the public hearing will end and the board will resume the public meeting, at which time the board will deliberate and vote on the application before us. The board asks that both sides keep their remarks to the subject at hand and try not to repeat what has already been said. Above all, the board wants to be fair to everyone and make the best possible decision based on the testimony presented and all applicable approval criteria established in the Nashua revised ordinances for conditional, special use permits, site plans, and subdivisions. Thank you for your interest and courteous attention, and at this time I would ask that you please turn off or silence your phones. First item on the agenda under new business, conditional use permits, case 824-0138, ECNH Real Estate Holdings, Inc., property located at 310 Daniel Webster Highway. As any member, before we take a vote to accept jurisdiction, I would like to note I'm going to recuse myself from this case. So before we vote on jurisdiction, Scott, would you mind if I hand over the duties of this, running this case to you?
Sure, that's fine. Yep. All right. Wait for you to go down there, but.
Yep.
So regarding this case, so just a question for staff. It looks like we have 1, 2, 3, 4. So we don't
You
have
do not have a quorum.
Right. So we won't be able to take jurisdiction at this point.
Correct.
We can have a discussion on when we might want to rehear.
Correct. There has been a request from the applicant to consider a special meeting. Normally, we only have one meeting in August. If we were to do a special meeting, it would fall on, I believe, the 15th. So our normal third Thursday. Alternatively, this would be on the agenda for September 5th.
Okay. I definitely won't be here on the 15th because I'll be out of town. It might, is there a procedure where we can, or where planning can query the board first?
Yes.
And then, because you're going to have to make notice anyway of the new meeting, right? And
We
you need
will.
10 days or? what?
Yep, and
So-
we can send out a query Friday, and as long as we can get notices out, I believe by Tuesday of next week, we will have given proper notice.
Okay, yeah, I think we should take that process, understanding there's some vacations and other things going, and I wouldn't want to schedule it for a date certain right now and then just have this happen again, so you'd be better off, because I assume we have flexibility to do the 22nd or something if we wanted
Yep.
to, right? I guess we do we need a motion to do that? I think we
No.
do. Or no, okay, we don't need anything for that. All right,
We actually can't take a motion, 'cause we
Right.
don't have a quorum right now.
right, so, all
We
right,
can't do anything.
No business,
Business
yeah.
ends right here.
all right. So you'll take care of that?
Will do.
All right. Okay.
We can't do anything until he comes back,
Yeah.
technically.
Yep.
Next item on the agenda, new business subdivision plan, case 824-0123, property located at 24 Cabot Drive and 18 Boylston Avenue. Has any member of the board had an opportunity to review the application and is willing to make a motion for board acceptance or jurisdiction? Mr. Leclerc.
I'll make a motion to accept jurisdiction of 824-0123.
All right, there's a motion by Mr. Leclerc. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Hirsch. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. If anyone is here on behalf of the applicant, please come forward.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the board. My name is Morgan Hollis. I'm an attorney at Gottesman and Hollis, 39 East Pearl Street in Nashua. And I'm here this evening. I'm representing the owner of the two properties that is the subject of the plan before you. This plan was prepared by Maynard and Paquette Engineering Associates. Unfortunately, they're not able to present, so I got a last-minute call to come forward. So I'm presenting on behalf of the owner, as well as the applicant and the engineer. The two lots of record are owned by the same owner. There's just a brief history here. That is, these are two old lots of record from a plan in 1956. One lot is on Cabot Drive, and the other is off of Boylston Avenue. The plan had a lot line between them. In 2022, there was a layout showing a house with a garage left. As you face it, garage left. And utilities were installed, no house was built. And then in 2024, when they started considering this year building a house, it was realized that having a driveway straight in rather than going in front of the house made more sense, and if we could just adjust the boundary line slightly, then it would all fit together. So that's really the request here, is to just adjust that mutual boundary line. There are two waivers that have been requested. One is not to show all the existing conditions, basically because this is just the two lots, and we're just moving a lot line. Utilities, as I say, are all in place. There's a house on the Cabot Drive side, but no house on the Boylston Avenue side. And the second waiver is not to locate all the utilities underground, because the service pole is right opposite the house which would be built, and all utilities, all electric lines are above ground. So the existing utilities that would go underground are in already. So those are the two waivers. We've reviewed the staff report, and we're accepting of all the conditions in the staff report. One references the fire department. There's some address issues, and the other references in the technical review comments to show on the plan where the overhead electric will come off of the pole. And we're agreeable to those conditions, Mr. Chair.
All right. Thank you. Questions from the board?
Just confirming, these are conforming lots with the
Yes.
adjustment? Okay.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, seeing none, we'll open it up to the public. Any member of the public wishing to speak with concern or opposition to this application? Any member wishing to speak any member of the public wishing to speak in favor of this application? Okay, seeing none, throw it back to the board. This seems fairly straightforward. Any- Yeah, oh, I'm sorry, like, close the public hearing at this time. Members of the board, any further questions or discussions on this one?
Seems pretty straightforward. I'll make a motion.
All right, please, Mr. Leclerc.
So I'm going to make a first motion with respect to this application that we grant the following waivers. Section 190-282B9, subdivision plan submittal requirements. And then a second waiver being granted to 190-221A and C to waive the requirements to locate the electric and telecommunication utilities underground. And just to note that in considering these waiver requests, that we utilize the criteria indicated in the staff report for that analysis.
All right, thank you. So there's a motion by Mr. Leclerc with respect to granting the waivers. Is there a second? Second, Mr. Hirsch. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Leclerc, would you like to continue?
Sure. Make a second motion to grant a conditional subdivision approval for the lot line adjustment of 24 Cabot Drive in 18 Boylston Ave, finding that the application does meet the requirements outlined in NRO 190-138G with the precedent and the subsequent conditions as indicated in the staff report.
Right.
Mr. Hudson, did you?
Yeah, I have
Comment?
one item, which is, this references Joe Mandola's letter, or memo. The memo just says that engineering has no comment, so I don't think that needs to be referenced as a condition of a precedent condition. So that's under item C, I think, is it?
The report was probably updated since you were looking at it. But yes,
Oh,
the
okay.
current report has that struck.
Great.
Okay. So I'm going to amend my motion to remove precedent condition C. Everything else the same.
Thank you. So there's a motion by Mr. Leclerc. Is there a second?
Well,
Oh, Mr.
sorry.
Hudson, please. No,
C
sir.
did reference a fire department comment. Is there a fire department comment to be addressed?
Yes, there are. Yeah, address and comments.
Oh, okay. All right, so I'm going to restate that. I'm going to amend precedent condition C to read only that prior to the chair signing the plan, all comments will be addressed to the satisfaction of the fire department.
Thank you.
All right. All right, there's a motion by Mr. Leclerc. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Mr. Hudson. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next item on the agenda, under new business subdivision plan, is case 824-0119. Properties located at 49 and 51 Robin Hood Road and 44 Nightingale Road. Has any member of the board had an opportunity to review the materials and is willing to make a motion about the board accepting jurisdiction?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Alderman Clee. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Leclerc. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Motion passes. If there's a representative for the case that we just called, please feel free to come up to the podium and present your case. If I could just remind you, please state your name and address for the record, please. Thank
My
you.
name's Charlie Mellon. I live at 49 Robin Hood Road. And as I say, it's a lot line adjustment where we're trying to get 6 feet over with the, because it comes halfway into our driveway. And on the top part, Mitchell has given me the top half of the hill. And that's just for I can get a privacy. And basically, it's, I'm not doing anything else except moving the lot lines.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the board for the applicant?
No.
No, seeing none. Open it up to the public. Any member of the public wishing to speak in opposition or with concern to this application? Seeing none. Any member of the public wishing to speak in favor of this application? Seeing none. Thank you for your testimony. I'm going to close the public hearing at this time. This is another one that seems pretty straightforward. Any further
No.
discussion or commentary? Certainly. Mr.
Just for
Leclerc.
staff, the waiver of 190-282B9, that's appropriate?
Yes.
Okay. And then there was a note in the report about engineering comments pending,
That has since been updated.
and,
We have no comments.
all right, so
Yep.
there are no, so, just, says no, and there's no subsequent conditions on this, just
Correct.
precedent? Okay. All right,
Mr. Leclerc, would you like to make a motion?
sure, yeah.
Certainly.
So I'm going to make a first motion regarding waivers, and I'm going to make a motion to grant the waiver from 190-282B9, the subdivision plan requirements, and to note that in the consideration of this waiver, that the board is utilizing the criteria outlined within the staff report.
All right. There's a motion by Mr. Leclerc regarding granting of the waiver. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Hirsch. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Motion passes. Would you like to continue, Scott?
Sure, I'll make a second motion regarding this application that we grant conditional subdivision approval for the lot line adjustment at 49 and 59 Robin Hood Road and 44 Nightingale Lane, finding that this application does meet the requirements outlined in subdivision NRO 190-138G with the 4 precedent conditions that are written in the staff report.
All right, thank you. Motion by Mr. Leclerc. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Clee. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Motion passes. All right. Moving on in the agenda, there's 2 cases that the board should hear together. The first is under a new business subdivision plan. That's case 824-0118, property located at 101 Major Drive. The second item would be new business under site plans, case 824-0120, also property located at 101 Major Drive. Has any member of the board had an opportunity to review those applications and is willing to make a motion regarding board accepting jurisdiction? Mr. Leclerc?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to accept jurisdiction in both cases.
All right, motion by Mr. Leclerc, pardon me, motion by Mr. Leclerc. Is there a second? Second, Mr. Hirsch. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? All right. Anyone on behalf of the applicant would like to come up to the podium? Thank you, Attorney Hollis.
Good evening again. For the record, Morgan Hollis, an attorney at Gottesman and Hollis, 39 East Pearl Street in Nashua. And I'm here this evening sort of as the introduction to the team and to the project. And then I'll be turning it over to the project engineer, Jim Petropoulos of Hayner Swanson. Our team includes members of the Nashua Housing and Redevelopment Authority, board members, staff, also Tremont Development Partners. They're both partners in the development of the project. Their representatives are here this evening in case questions arise. Also, we have VHB, and Jason Plord is representing VHB, and we have the architect, Philip Saltmarsh, is here this evening, and I'm just the project attorney on this. But and the reason I'm introducing it is there is some background that I think is relevant. As you know, I was before the board talking about this project a bit when legislation was pending before the Board of Aldermen, and it was presented to you for your consideration. The package this evening is before you includes subdivision plans, application materials, site plans, and the application materials supporting it, a stormwater report, a traffic report, architectural plans, landscape plans, and site suitability reports. The site suitability report, as you know, is a requirement of applications within the mixed-use overlay district. This property is located in the RCMU district, and that is a result of recent legislation. So it is the RC underlying district with a mixed-use overlay, which gives this board a fair amount of flexibility in its discussions and determinations of approval for site plans. The report, the suitability report, highlights the reasons for seeking the redevelopment and how it fits within the community and the location. I just want to give you some background. This project, which is before you this evening, which is known as Maynard Homes, and it is owned and operated by the Nashua Housing and Redevelopment Authority, was constructed in 1948. The authority recently performed an inventory of the development and found that it was in need of redevelopment and in need of attention. And they then did a study of the building to determine what the costs, what the upgrades would be, what the costs would be, and how could it be accomplished, and also to examine the possibility of adding some additional units as the units that were there did not maximize out the permitted density under the RC zone. After a fairly thorough analysis, it was determined that the property is actually functionally obsolete, and making repairs and upgrades is not fiscally responsible. Simply too much cost involved. This was similar to the analysis and the conclusion that came about in the former Bronstein Apartments, now known as Monahan Manor. And during that time, they were able to identify construction techniques and architectural design that allowed them to establish greater density on the site, providing more housing for affordable housing needs. As you know, the city has a huge backup and backlog waiting list for this type of housing, and it's imperative on the authority to try to establish some new units. In the analysis of rebuilding Maynard Homes, obviously to add units you need to go up, or you're going to be spreading out and covering all of the remaining ground that's out there. So a redevelopment plan came up. It was presented to both the residents and also to neighbors of this development. And after a meeting with both the residents and the neighbors and hearing some of their concerns, some of which were project related and some of which really didn't have much to do with our project or any redevelopment of a project, there were some changes made to the design plan that was last seen by the neighbors. So there may be some neighbors here this evening and also some residents who saw earlier iterations. But the plan before you is showing that the units presented are 274 units, up from 100 units. Originally, what was presented at the hearing with the neighbors and the meeting with the neighbors was 359 units. That was the goal, obviously. The more units, the better for the housing authority and for those people needing affordable housing. But after hearing the concerns, the reduction went down to 274. Parking spaces were reduced from 660 to 447, giving greater open space to the project, and allowing for, you'll hear from Jim, to identify the recreational areas and opportunities and general open space on the site. The buildings that were along Engle Street were shifted considerably away from Engle Street. Height reduction occurred from 5 stories to 4 stories on the back or rear buildings, maintaining only 3 stories on Burke Street. All of those reductions in scope and size, as I say, arose out of concerns from neighbors and residents. The result is the plan that's presented this evening, which is a group of buildings 4 stories and 3 stories high, 274 units. That's sort of the background of how we arrived at the plan that's presented to you. And as you know, the zoning ordinance passed, so we are in the mixed-use overlay zone. Happy to answer any questions, but Mr. Chair, I guess I'd like to turn it over to Jim Petropoulos.
Certainly. Thank you for the introduction.
Thank you, Morgan, and good evening, members of the board, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Jim Petropoulos. I'm a professional engineer at Hayner Swanson, Inc., doing business at 3 Congress Street in Nashua, New Hampshire. And as Morgan said, I'm really here to present the facts of both of these applications to the board and to the public. There is a lot of information, Mr. Chairman, on this. I will try to be informative and expeditious at both the same time. Sam, thank you for helping me. We're going to start with an overhead graphic, the aerial graphic that gets us located. It is located, the property, along Burke, Ingalls, and Spalding Street in the eastern part of Nashua. And as Morgan said, we are zoned in the RC urban residence with a mixed-use overlay district blanket. The property is made up currently of 4 parcels that total 17 acres. Sam, if you go to the next slide, please. Thank you. Direct abutters to the property are Burke Street to the north, and across Burke Street we have a number of single and 2-family houses. We have residential lots, Girls Inc. and Ingle Street bordering the property to the west. Vaggie Homes, Wagner Court abuts the site to the east. And undeveloped land to the south of the property is owned by the city of Nashua. It's known as Joyce Park. The Maynard Homes property, as you see on the screen right now, currently contains 12 2-story multifamily residential buildings totaling 110 units. A total of 222 parking spaces exists within the development, along with street parking on 2 public roads that wind through this development. A portion of Spalding Street, and then the U-shaped road you see on the map is known as Major Drive, and that is also a public road. A lot of detail on the drawing. Maynard Homes has its complement of sidewalks, clotheslines, storage units, and paved recreations throughout the property. The land itself is fairly flat, sandy soils in the area. There are no wetlands on the property. We, of course, know Salmon Brook is located just to our south and to our east. And the property is currently serviced by all utilities within the abutting streets. Sam, the next slide, please. So the first application that we submitted to you had to do with the land. It's known as a subdivision plan. And the key elements of the plan are, first and foremost, to discontinue those 2 public streets within the perimeter of the property. That will require aldermanic approval, which will come at some point if we're successful moving forward. We will then consolidate those 4 lots I mentioned, and then create 2 new lots. The Maynard Home lots, bordered in orange, 13.9 acres, and then just to the east, the units along Vaggie Drive, 3.6 acres. The Vaggie Drive units are also part of the Nashua Housing and Redevelopment Authority property, but it's not part of the site plan application this evening. So with regard to the subdivision, it's a very straightforward plan of land. Both lots will comply with the Nashua subdivision regulations. We have asked for one waiver, section 190-281-52, which is survey of adjacent parcels within 1,000 feet. It's waivers you just granted on 3 cases in front of us, or 2 cases in front of us. It's a fairly standard waiver. In our letter, we describe the reasons for granting that waiver. Before I move on to the site plan, any questions from the board on the subdivision?
Anyone on the board?
Great.
All right, seeing none, Mr. Petropoulos, please continue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sam, next slide, please. So, on this newly created lot, it is being proposed to redevelop the Maynard Homes project into 6 multi-story, multi-family buildings that will ultimately contain 274 residential units and 447 parking spaces. The project will be built in 2 phases over a period of 3 to 4 years. How does this happen when you have an ongoing residential development? Well, very similar to Bronstein Manor, I'll give you a very quick overview. Nashua Housing and Redevelopment Authority will, in the first phase, and you can see there's a red line that weaves its way kind of east-west through the drawing. The first phase is the top 4 buildings, the second phase is the lower 2. The residents in that phase 1 area will be relocated. Once they're relocated, that portion of the site will be demoed. The new 4 buildings will be built, and then those residents will have an option to come back and live in this facility at this address. The second phase is the similar process. Relocate residents, demo the buildings, build the new construction, and then invite them back. That's the phasing. And again, it's the approach similar to Bronstein. Okay, some key elements to this plan. Access is from 2 access points on Burke Street. They match and in the same locations as Major Drive, that loop I alluded to earlier. Same thing on Ingalls, a single access directly across from Spalding Street in the same location that currently exists. The connection to Vaggie Drive will continue to remain. Parking areas located throughout the development. We have a ratio of 1.6 spaces per unit, which I think is a sweet spot for a multifamily project such as this. Building 3, which is the building on the left side that runs north-south, will contain a community room and a Head Start care facility. The community room will include gathering space with a kitchen, a fitness area for the residents, a business center, and probably the management leasing office. Head Start, which currently is on the property today, is a facility that will accommodate 25 to 30 children, and we have a fenced-in location for outdoor rec as part of the Head Start program. The project will comply with open space, and all utilities are available on the property to service these new buildings. Next plan, CM, has to do with our landscaping, which was part of the application. The primary focus was to provide trees that will complement the buildings. We're proposing a tree-lined boulevard down the middle to give the project a little bit better sense of arrival than we currently have today. We've tried to maintain buffers where we could, and I'll call your attention to that upper left corner, that northwest corner. There's several residential lots at the corner of Ingalls and Burke Street, and behind them is a wonderful stand of trees, so we've respected those trees and they will remain in that location. The new plan calls for 216 new trees. We'll also attempt to save a number of the larger trees that are out there. I know there's 2 along Ingalls that are significant trees that are being proposed to be saved, as well as several others within development as best we could. The project will include several outdoor recreational areas. There's a community garden proposed in the open space along Ingalls Street, 2 tot lots, a half basketball court, outdoor passive rec areas. In the southeast corner, primarily, a picnic area, grilling. There'll also be access to the city-owned Joyce Park property to the south. We've included lighting plans in our package, LED lighting, full cutoff, no spillage, downcast lighting, which is in accordance with your regulations. So I'd like to talk about stormwater for a minute. The next drawing, please, Sam. Thank you. Your National Land Use Code 190-115 requires redevelopment projects to improve drainage to the maximum extent possible as determined by the Planning Board. Currently, the Maynard Homes project relies on leaching catch basins located throughout the project that have been there for many years. And when they don't work, it spills over into Major Drive and in Spalding Circle. They get into the public street, where flow is then piped into Ingalls and Burke Street. And in Ingalls and Burke Street, you have combined sewers and drains. So I want to talk about that a little bit this evening. Our new stormwater project proposes to curb and catch basin the paved parking areas and capture roof drains and use those sandy soils to promote subsurface leaching areas or recharge areas. And you see 4 of such areas located on the drawing in yellow. They can accommodate between the 10-year and the 100-year storm event in the different locations. During peak events, our proposed drainage will not run into Ingalls and into Burke Street. It will run to the east to an existing outlet that exists down the hill and into Salmon Brook. That outlet pretty much picks up Vaggie Drive portion of the project, but does not pick up Maynard Homes. We have a significant reduction in water getting off this property because of our approach to stormwater. We'll eliminate a lot of water getting there. We're also providing qualitative treatment. There's another element to stormwater. When our client met with representatives of the neighborhood, one of the big concerns was backup on Burke Street neighborhoods and on Ingalls of the combined sewers and drains. When a peak storm comes and that quick surge rainfall event hits, water backs up into these poor people's homes. And so in looking at this, we met with the engineering department and came up with a way to try to alleviate and help that problem. And what you're seeing are those lines in green, where we're going to construct, the Maynard Homes redevelopment project will construct deep, large diameter pipes as shown in green from the outlet up to Burke Street and over to Ingalls Street. And what this will allow the city to do in the future is to go in and rework and disconnect the drains and the sewers. The reason they haven't done that, they have no way to get that water to Salmon Brook. And so by providing this project, these deep drain lines, it's a very important first step for this solution. A traffic study was submitted as part of our application. Jason Plord, BHB, a very well-respected traffic consultant. This board knows that applicants are required to submit a traffic worksheet as part of our application. And there's here in Nashua, there's certain thresholds that if traffic increases, you need to do further study. We did not exceed those thresholds. However, we're adding 164 units here. We will be adding traffic. But the measure is, will we adversely impact the local roads with 164 units? And that report had concluded that we would not. We have good safe sight distance for these driveways. And this study was submitted by our team to the city traffic engineer. He came back with several offers of mitigation for us to consider. He's asked the development to install 2 radar speed limit signs on Burke Street. You've seen these posted, they're electronic. They show you the speed limit and they show you flashing when you exceed that speed limit. So 1 in each direction on Burke Street. The city traffic engineer also recommended 2 rapid rectangular flashing beacon crosswalks, one at the intersection of Burke and Ingalls, and one at the intersection of Burke and Newberry. Our client has agreed to install those improvements. One other improvement is way down on Ingalls. The city had asked if the project would construct 4 parking spaces and a kiosk to serve as kind of a trailhead into that Joyce Park area. It's not shown on the drawing, but they've also agreed to perform that improvement. I'm going to wrap up with a very few things. Architecture, Sam, if you're so kind to scroll again. We had submitted a number of prospective Market Square architects, provided these wonderful perspectives. We have 3- and 4-story buildings within the project. In case you're wondering, the 3-story measures 46 feet in height. The 4-story measures 61 feet in height. Okay, they're flat roof buildings, combination of various colors and exterior materials, similar to the Monahan Manor project. If you're wondering about the bedroom breakdown, 87 one-bedroom units, 114 two-bedroom, 66 three-bedroom, and Building 3 will contain 6 4-bedroom units. Mr. Chairman, we've asked for one waiver. It's the same waiver as the landscape plan. It is for survey of properties within 1,000 feet. Construction phasing work is expected to start in the summer of 2025, but there's a lot of work to go, in terms of relocating the residents that I described. The first phase, 4 buildings, will take approximately 2 years from start to finish to complete, and then that process will be repeated in phase 2. It should take a little bit less time, 18 months. In summary, Mr. Chairman, we believe the application conforms to the requirements of the National Land Use Code. Staff has done staff report memos for both the subdivision and the site plan with conditions of approval. We have read them, we have consulted with our client, and those conditions of approval are acceptable. And with that, I will be happy to answer any questions you may have on the project or the presentation. If I can't answer them, I may have to lean on some of our team members who are here this evening.
Thank you very much. I'll open it up to the board. Questions from the board? Mr. Leclerc, please.
Yeah, mine is just one on the phasing and the relocation. How many units are there existing now, you said?
There's
About
110 units.
110. Is phase 1 construct more than 110?
Phase 1 constructs more than 110. It constructs.
So it, yeah.
It constructs 179?
Okay. So is the intent to allow the residents that are not affected by phase 1 to move into phase 1? Is that, so I'm just thinking out loud here, does phase 1 essentially get everybody back? And then some?
Yeah, so I think there's 70 current units within phase 1, and so we'd be providing 179. So there's more provided than what is being displaced.
Right. But I was wondering about the other folks that actually aren't being replaced. Are they going to get the opportunity to move into phase 1?
Interesting. If they're living in phase 2, can
Right,
they move into phase
right.
1? Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. There's, I believe, 40 units existing in phase 1, so there would be ample capacity to do that.
Okay. Yeah, all right. That was my first question anyway.
Thank you. Other members of the board? Alderman Clee, please.
Thank you. That was in part my question too, is if you would be using the finished phase 1 to either move some that have already been displaced, bring them into that area. I know that some of the people that have been displaced may not meet the requirements, meaning that they're in a 3-bedroom and you may not have a 3-bedroom available. I understand that, but I would like to see, and I know it's not your decision, so whoever it is that's making the decision, I would like to see them get back in place. In Monahan Manor, if I'm not mistaken, some of these people were displaced for so long that they didn't come back just because it wasn't trying to move people and so on. It just wasn't, they were gone too long. So if this does happen and this does go through, let's get them back as quickly as possible. We're turning people's lives upside down. It sounds like a good project, and we're going to hear from the public to their concerns. I do have a couple questions for you. You said that you've talked to the people. It sounds like you tried to implement some of their concerns and so on. Some of the projects that I hear as an alderman and as being on the planning board, the people that have done that, they go back to the people with some of these changes. Have you done that? Have you gone back to the neighbors, to the community, and say, before you came here, based on some of these are some of the changes you've made, to find out
Right.
how they feel about
Right.
that?
For the record, I did not, I was not part of the initial community
Okay.
meeting. There were other team members that were there that evening. I do not know if they've gone back. I don't think they did.
Okay.
Okay. But I may be incorrect there.
And if I may, Mr. Chairman, I
Certainly.
apologize. I do have a few questions, but the Head Start program that you mentioned that's on the property, are they going to be relocated during this this phasing of?
Sam, if you could go
They are
to,
not on the property. Head Start is not on the property.
We just
Did you
need to
wanna-
keep the auditorium in order, please. I'm sorry, you'll have an opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Sam, if you could go to the existing conditions, as I was just going to say, the Head Start, just keep scrolling down. Yeah. So Head Start, thank you, right there. So there's a very small building off of Major Drive. If you take your cursor, you see that? Yeah, not that one, right next to it. I believe that that's the current Head Start facility on the campus, right there. And that building is not being touched. That building will end up being morphed into kind of Vaggie Drive. So Head Start will remain during construction, as I understand it.
So I heard you just say it's on the campus, so it's
Yeah.
within your property lines is what it is.
Yeah.
So, okay. So, but it's not part of
Yeah.
the Maynard housing at the moment. so-
Everything gets fenced in and around it and
Okay.
protected so that they can currently exist. Yeah.
Okay. So, and if I may continue with some of my questions?
Oh, certainly.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt.
That's okay.
We do need folks in the audience to be respectful of the process here. You're certainly going to have your opportunity to speak, but if you could please just keep the chatter down. Thank you. Alderman Cleap, please
Thank you.
continue.
And I will want to hear from the audience when it is their turn too. So, you talked about the overflow, and I do understand the CSOs. I have that issue in Ward 3 where things go into that. So I'm grateful that you're going to have this sandy area and infiltration, and but obviously, like last winter and what's happening up north and so on, we do get these horrible rain types of things. You talked about it going into Salmon Brook. Can Salmon Brook and its subsidiaries handle such
Sure.
of
Yeah.
a nightmare?
So, if I may, Sam, go to that stormwater plan. So the combination of these yellow areas providing both storage and recharge tends to provide a reduction in those peak slugs of water. It gets it to calm down, it gets it to recharge. And then the overflow ends up going back into Salmon Brook. So when we design a project like this, we look and see what's getting to Salmon Brook now, and there isn't much because it's getting into the public streets and getting into Burke and into
Right.
Ingalls. So we've provided such large areas of recharge that our computations show that we're not adding any more rate of water getting to Salmon Brook after the development compared to before the development.
Thank you. And thank you for thinking of how to stop anything more from coming into people's overflow of these CSOs and that drainage, because I can tell you, I know from my ward, the people that have to deal with that backflow into their basements and so on, the stench and so on. So my heart goes out to anybody who has to deal with that. So thank you. Thank you.
I would agree.
Other members of the board? Mr. Hudson, please.
I just want to speak to the stench in the basement issue because I'm with Public Works. All properties are supposed to have a backflow preventer, in which case if there's flooding, in the system in the street, which is unavoidable during these heavy rains with combined sewer systems, that would prevent the backwater from getting into the house. So if you don't have one of those, you should have one of those. Those are required by plumbing code. So that's so many calls and an issue, that's usually one of the first questions we ask if they have that. So just encourage people to look into that if they haven't already.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hudson. Other
Yes, sir.
members of the board? None at this time. Mr. Petropoulos, thank you. At this point, I'm going to open it up to the public. If any member of the public would like to speak in opposition or with concern to this application, either the subdivision or the site plan, please come up to the podium. Remember to please state your name and address for the record. Just come up one at a time. If there's multiple folks that want to speak, you're more than welcome to sort of queue up and form a line. But certainly, the floor is yours. Please go right ahead.
Thank you. There was just a few things that
I'm sorry, you just need to,
hi, my name
and you
is-
can lower the microphone if you'd like, but I do just need you to identify yourself for the record.
Hi, my name is Tony Nisley. I am the president of the Voices of Major Drive Resident Council. I think a couple of the concerns for the residents, he was talking about the community room. Are there going to be two? Because he was discussing a community room in one of the buildings, and I'm wondering if it's going to reflect the community room that they do have in Monahan Manor, because we have gone and had a tour of the facility over there. It has a, it says a game room, a community room, and then the workout room for a facility that's going to have almost 300 people in it. The community room that is offered isn't a freely open community room. From what I gather, it's not just open, it is reserved for reservation, and you need to put a $100 deposit down on the room if you're going to use it, which is good for the residents that are going to be paying 80 or full rent, but not for the residents that are in the lower incomes, because then they would have to make a choice between presence or a community room to have their birthday party. Also, I'm wondering about the rec room. The rec room that we saw was directly next to the community room in the Monahan Manor, and it consisted of, it was a very small rectangular room with a large television, an air hockey table, and 3 small pub stools. So again, my concern would be for a very large community, I'm just wondering why the game room is set up for 2 people to play 1 game of air hockey in a very small space. Also, I'm wondering about the number of apartments that he was talking about. When it was mentioned to move residents from Phase 2 back into the Phase 1 buildings, I'm just wondering also out loud, if there are only, the 3 back buildings that need to be relocated, I'm wondering why there would not be enough available apartments in the already constructed buildings. And I'm wondering if that's has to do with the AMI restrictions for the different sections of the apartments, whether it's going to be under the 30% or the 50% or the 80%. I'm just wondering. And I'm just wanting to wonder, when I'm seeing the new plans up here, he did mention that they are going to do the half court and the 2 parks in the community garden, but I'm not seeing them included in the building design. I'm just really seeing buildings. Where are the green spaces around that? I'm just wondering. And how are the residents going to connect with them?
The applicant will have an opportunity to respond, but thank you very much for your comments.
Thank you so much.
I've taken him down too.
I'm Reverend Sally Newhall of 33 Digital Drive, Unit 308 here in Nashua. I belong to the Greater Nashua Housing Justice Group, which is a small group of clergy from the Nashua Area Interfaith Council, which has been meeting for a number of years trying to encourage and address housing justice issues in Greater Nashua. And as such, I've been attending the Housing Authority meetings for the last 6 months. I think I missed one. We have repeatedly at those meetings asked that they share with us the designs as they were being developed. They told us that the last time they reported to us about them, they said that they had finally just gotten the designs and they were going to review them and they would bring them to share with us once they had reviewed them. I was at their meeting last week. They said nothing about the meeting this week. They have not showed us the designs or explained them, and my anger is not very Christian today. I don't know what authority the planning board has to address that, but I think a major step has been missed in this development. I have nothing against what's been designed. It looks beautiful, but people haven't had a chance to look at it and to respond and to raise those issues. Tanya raised some of the residents' issues, but they have more, and they haven't had a chance to air them. And that's just frustrating. So I'm not going to address any of the particulars of the designs. I've printed out everything, read as much as I can understand from a clergy person's point of view. But I would love more time to be able to look at them and to be able to have some questions answered. But I don't have enough knowledge at the moment to ask those questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Ken Mosier. I live at 58 Burke Street. I have a couple of concerns. First, I'd like to go on record at the rezoning meeting, which I did attend. The client's attorney stated that there was more than one meeting with the neighbors. I don't know which neighbors were invited, but I was not. There was only the one introductory meeting. To her point, the communication thing very much lacking for the neighborhood. With the residents, I'm not sure how in the loop they were kept, but based on my experience, it's lacking and needs improvement. The property is rezoned to multi-use. The increase in density will increase traffic. This traffic study that was alluded to, I would really like to see it because I've lived there 40 years. I worked at Improved Machinery during its heyday. I understand the traffic on Burke Street. I'd like to see what this report says. There's never a problem with traffic reports. That's my understanding. How you can add more density and not increase the traffic on Burke Street entering in and out of Major Drive, that just doesn't, the math doesn't work for me. The traffic controls that were mentioned, a few years ago there was an issue before the, I'm not before the mayor, but I don't know what committee was involved in it, with speeding and accidents on Burke Street. The police put up their mobile speed limit sign, and within 2 days they were told to remove it because it turned Burke Street into a let's see how fast we can go contest, where a couple of times somebody would whiz by and the numbers scrambled. They couldn't keep up. It eventually ended on the top of a 7 and maybe a 1 in the second place holder. So the police department came and got their radar sign. I'm not a big fan of your speed is signs, especially on Burke Street. We already have a fair number of cars, motorcycles, going down Burke Street and just accelerating. I can hear them starting at the end of the street because it's a lovely straight quarter-mile racetrack. Putting radar signs, in my opinion, would encourage that. The flashing crosswalks signals, 100% behind that. Terrific idea. How is the increased density going to affect our local elementary school? That's a question that has repeatedly received a non-answer. Now, the renderings that were shown here, it was mentioned, these are a flat roof design. The rendering showed a peak roof design. Picturing that as a flat roof design changes the character of that building. Having said that, a 3-story building of this design does not fit the neighborhood on Burke Street. The closest to the street is something like 27 feet, less the sidewalk, so they're basically right on Burke Street. The trees that are scheduled to be planted there, if they're similar to Bronstein, I won't live long enough for them to do any aesthetic good, because they're little 2-inch diameter, good to grow saplings. The character of these buildings, I consider them cookie cutter industrial boxes to put people. They don't fit a 100-year-old neighborhood of single multifamily homes. The height, 3 stories, it just doesn't fit Crown Hill. What other options might have been looked into to eliminate 1 story on the Burke Street side, such as adding a story to the inner buildings and making 2 5-story buildings where they wouldn't encroach on the rest of the neighborhood. There are other ideas as well. Same thing applies to the green space that was alluded to. You have a playground in the southwest corner, and if you move that building that's right adjacent to it eastward, you could put the green space more centrally located, safer for the kids, easier access for more residents, and it would make for a more welcoming shared space, as opposed to kind of being associated with that one building. Moving the 2 inner buildings as far eastward as possible could allow for more green space, playground areas, places for kids to burn up some energy so they don't go to school and get rambunctious. When they repaved or rebuilt or put new water lines in on Burke Street, there was, besides being incredibly inconvenient, my house suffered some damage from vibration and construction. Who and how will damages due to the demolition and construction of something of this magnitude, how will that be rectified to the existing homes? And is there any recourse, or do I just have to have somebody come in and fix the cracked plaster and the twisted tin ceilings, that sort of thing? What measures will be in place for the increased construction traffic? When they were doing Burke Street, I get the construction vehicles have to be there. They don't have to park in front of someone's driveway. However, that did happen on more than one occasion. The dust control, what I know in the plans, everything's detailed. The dust control was non-existent, water truck now and then. My house was a disaster for the whole 8 months that it took. During the demolition phase, what measures will be in place for pest and wildlife control? I have a property on the coast. It's an older property. There was an older property right next to it. First-hand, real-world example, they knocked that property down. I suddenly had a termite problem. So at my expense, I had to do some termite control. I can foresee things like that happening here, along with, we have skunks, we have rats, we have chipmunks, squirrels, rabbits, well, you name it, it's out there. Where are they going to go during this construction? Well, they're going to go, they have 2 directions, east or west, really. And east, they got the brook, and that's it. West, north, they got the neighborhood. So I'd like to know what, if any, measures will be put in place to control that. has there been a wastewater capacity study done for to tie this many more units into the existing Burke Street, Ingle Street wastewater plan? Will there be any protections for the neighbors or assurances for the neighbors that are currently dealing with sewage backups in their homes? That's one of those things that's like ambiguous, but I want to ask it because this is our opportunity. Will there be permanent fencing surrounding the property? I know this, according to the plan, there'll be fencing on the back side or southernmost side between the project and Salmon Brook. That's terrific. I wouldn't want my kid running, chasing a ball and going down that hill. Will this affect our neighborhood water and gas pressure, adding this much density to the neighborhood? Major driving, Spalding Street will become private roads. That's in your A24-118. I'm a little bit puzzled by this. Who's going to be responsible for the utilities? The city or Nashua Housing? Is the city going to be compensated for giving up the real estate? And in the plans, it's outlined the granite curbing will be removed, stockpiled. DPW will be given an opportunity to say whether they want to keep it or not. Years ago, I was going to have some curbing put in, and the cost from the city was incredible at the time. I can't imagine curbing's cheap. If the city doesn't want it, the project general manager, general contractor, he's free to use it wherever he wants. That's terrific. Any compensation to the city for that? I'm not sure, since it's a housing project, if they pay real estate taxes like I do, but if they do, will the Spalding Street and Major Drive real estate be taxed accordingly? Who's going to maintain the private roads? Trash pickup, mail, package delivery, and so on. Other communities, it's going to be a private 55 and older community, private road. Well, it ends up after the first winter, the town or city is plowing those roads because they need it for emergency access. Things like that happen all the time. My question is, who's going to take care of trash removal? Who's going to take care of the repairs for the brand new sewer and drainage system should problems arise? And the other question, my neighbor who couldn't make it here, but I share the question, there's 1.6 parking places. That's to me, I think, pretty good. However, that doesn't take into account guests. Many families, especially in the service industry, they need 2 cars because it takes 2 incomes just to get by. Will they be parking on the street? Currently on Burke Street, when visitors come, they park right in front of, between the 2 major drive entrances. And it's not really an issue, more of a 1.6 parking. Hopefully that's adequate. Is it? That again, we just asking the question. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public that wish to speak in opposition or with concern?
My name is Valerie Denault. I have property on Burke Street, 48 Burke Street. And my problem still comes back to the water problem. Water can't flow uphill, and even if they're going to put those retainer pipes in to catch the water, it's going to flow back into my property as it has been ever since they did the road. I put in a retaining tank that can't take it when we get the severe rain, so my whole parking lot is water. And I do own the building that houses the grocery store on Burke Street, which you're dealing with customers trying to come to a store that half the parking lot is flooded. And I can't see that unless they resurface the road to flow to the two sewers that are at two other ends that flow uphill, not downhill. And the city has said that they can't really do much about it. This is the way the road was construction. The other thing is, I can't see on Burke Street having the backs of the houses face Burke Street so that they would avoid children coming out the doors and running across the sidewalk to get to a store and getting hit by a car. Now, just the looks of that, and with those buildings, I feel they're like barracks. You have the Veggie Village, the brick buildings and so forth fit in with the decor of what Crown Hill meant. But to put those ugly box housing that they've been putting all over the city of Nashua, I think it's a sin that you would do it, and especially in different colors. I don't think that brings anything. And if you want to make it look a little attractive, make them look like something that you'd really want to live in, not in a box. And I do think the green space, taking that away, these kids that live in the project, which you're going to put in how many more homes, and most of these families have 2 or 3 children. That's why they're living in a project. Their fathers are gone or the mothers are dead or whatever, and they're going to have this little area as a playground. I mean, years ago when the original project was filled, that whole middle section was a playground. They had swings, slides, etc. Then all of a sudden people needed storage sheds. Eliminate the playground. Put a little piece of it over to the side. So now you have big storage sheds. Where are these people that you're adding to? Where are they going to put the overload that they need for storage? And they're going to have to go rent a storage unit? They have these available right here. Well, now they won't have them, not if you're going to have a 4-story building. I mean, I think Nashua is a wonderful place to live, and I've lived 60 years in Crown Hill, if not longer. And we've never had problems with the project across the street. Those people are wonderful, they work hard, and you're going to destroy the whole neighborhood by putting, you're saying Lowe's House renting. I can't believe that's going to be so when you're going to be offering 3-bedroom apartments. And how are these people going to be able to afford to pay for it? You can't tell me that you're going to be charging them $1,000 a month for a 3-bedroom. Everybody's going to want those apartments, and they're going to cry that they are the poor little people in Nashua. I truly believe that you need to look at it a little bit more from the human aspect of what you're offering these people and what you're doing to our neighborhood. I mean, I hate to see it go downhill because we have very little problems in our neighborhood, and it's only going to add to it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just trying to get an understanding of how many folks, could I see a show of hands? I'm just trying to be respectful of folks' time if there's a lot of other speakers this evening, so. But you're welcome. Please go right ahead.
One of the things that I read was that you wanted to take.
No, can you please identify yourself for the record?
Margaret Belowski, 68 Burke.
Thank you.
One of the things that I read was that you wanted to take some of the buffer along Salmon Brook. And I enjoy watching our eagles. We have nesting eagles in the area. And I don't think that you should disturb them by even an inch. One of them flew right over my head when I was in my garden. It's wonderful to see. People have talked about the animals in the area. I think they should be taken into consideration. Would putting all this water into Salmon Brook interfere with our nesting eagles? That's a question I would like to ask. We met before with the city for a different proposal. They wanted to put all the city trucks at the end of our street, and we objected to that, and we asked that they not do that. My question to you is, there are at least 100 acres at the end of our street. Why did you not choose that area to build housing for some of the people that are here, that they could feel that they own? I think the people that are across the street from me in the Badgie area, and I'm going to call it Badgie, take pride. I don't see your area as much, and I apologize for this. I'm just talking about the area that I see. They put flowers in. They have ownership in the area. Building a 4-story now building down 1 story. I don't see that happening. We have children now. One of you mentioned the play area. I lived in this area when I was a child. We all used to play in that play area, and it was fun. But now, for fun, we have a group of 10, sometimes 12 boys that play chicken with the cars. They like to ride with their wheel up in the front, and they've gone down now as far as McDonald's, and they play in the street because the sheds that the people need, because they need storage, take up the space for them. I ask you, when you keep talking about green areas, can all the children be out at one day and play? The people across from me, I'm enjoying watching them playing horseshoes. They have picnic tables. They have little parties amongst themselves and have barbecues. One of the things that I'm afraid of is I really don't want 4 stories. I'd like some privacy in my backyard. Do I not deserve some privacy? Right now, some of the ladies across the street tell me the things that I'm doing in my yard, and it's only 2 stories. I can't imagine 2 more stories. People aren't sardines, and the drawings that you've given, that's what they look like, sardine cans. And I agree, ugly buildings, totally ugly. When an architect is coming into an area, they should look at the area and they should build according to what's there and make it fit in. We're not an urban area. We all try to get along as neighbors. I have very good neighbors. People across the street are very nice neighbors. I'd like that to continue. But we've had some problems because you people allow people from other areas to come into our area. They're not from Nashua. How many people that you have on your list are actually Nashua people that we'll be giving up our privacy for? I'd really like to know. We have one person in the buildings across the street from me who uses the building as a business. Her apartment is a business. She has restaurant kitchen up there. She cooks, and those things that she cooks get taken off, and I'm sure that she sells it. You're talking about people that need an apartment. I'd love to see somebody that needs an apartment be there rather than a cooking area. I think the city of Nashua needs to check out who they're putting into some of these buildings, because we had a pedophile that was across the street from us. When Badgie was originally concepted, we were told that it was always going to be elderly housing. It's not anymore. Some of the residents were afraid because they had someone that was living there that was a drug dealer, and it took a very long time for that person to leave. A lot of my things have been said. I think the city has to recognize that Burke Street does take a huge portion of responsibility for the city of Nashua. Do you realize? And do the people that were talking about the low amount of people that are going up and down the street, that we have over 200 buses that go up the street and down the street and up the street and down the street every day when school's in session. And we also have the activity buses. I have had 3 cars in front of my home totally demolished by school buses. We were talking about having the walk signs at Newbury. We asked the city for help about that quite a while ago because we witnessed a little boy on a bike coming out of Newbury. A lot of them do, and they don't look. You know, the kids. And he fell in the middle of the street. What did the traffic do? They all just veered around him. We asked, could we please have a stop sign there that would make people stop so that the children could go? Do you know in the mornings, I'm shoveling, and there are children that come out of Newbury Street that have to go to the bus stop that is in the Major Drive area, and the buses even that are coming down the street won't stop for them. We have crosswalks there now. We have a lot of traffic. Now you also added can on our street. Those trucks that come from can are more than 2.5 normal size tractor trailers. And they speed down the street too. We have an awful speeding problem. At night you can hear them. I've had a person take out my fence. I've had a person almost hit my house, missed it by 2 inches. I have a fire hydrant out front. I had somebody hit the fire hydrant and send it into my driveway. With the school buses and the right weather, I can't go in my driveway. All I can smell is exhaust. It's frightening to me to think that you think it's fine to put buildings 4 stories in front and stop the flow of air that usually comes from Salmon Brook. I won't be able to go out in my yard. And I agree with everybody else. I think I deserve the right to be able to have some privacy in my own yard. And I think 2 stories is plenty. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Victoria Markowitz. I live at 759 Grove Street in Manchester. I'm a community organizer with the Granite State Organizing Project, and I've been working closely with the Voices of Major Drive Resident Council over the past 6 months. I just wanted to mention a couple things. One, there has not been another meeting with the residents since the initial one in February where they presented the design. About the parking that one other person mentioned, the resident council has actually argued for less parking because a lot of people that currently live at Maynard Homes don't have a car. So I know that there will be market rate units included in the redevelopment, so those people may need more cars, but a lot of the people that currently live there don't need that many spaces. And just to clear up one question that was had about the Head Start building that's currently on the property, Head Start hasn't been using that building for the past several months. They've been off campus. And the resident council actually meets there regularly, so that's kind of the current community room. So I guess one of my questions is, will there be a second community room built into one of the new buildings? Or is that going to be the only community room? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public wishing to speak in opposition or with concern? I would ask, since you've already gotten, I just don't, please don't repeat what's already been stated. If you have something else new to add, you're welcome to do so, but I think we've absorbed a lot this evening, so thank you.
We just had a few residents that wanted to reiterate about the space and the size of the buildings. And I just wanted to also reiterate that most of the residents that we door knock and talk to do want more space, and they do not want 4-story buildings.
Thank you.
What does more space mean?
Green space.
Oh, green space, okay, thank you. Thank
Any
you.
other members of the public wishing to speak in opposition or with concern? All right, seeing none, are there any members of the public that would like to speak in favor of this application? All right, seeing, oh.
Good evening. My name is Tom Monahan. I am a commissioner for the Nashua Housing and Redevelopment Authority. I've been a commissioner for probably way too long, 35 years or so. You know, a lot of people have spoken in opposition or with questions, but I'm here to speak in favor of the 170-plus families that hopefully are going to be added to the neighborhood. I think that's something that hasn't been discussed. We in Nashua, right now at the Nashua Housing and Redevelopment Authority, have a waiting list of thousands of people. Section 8 waiting list is over 3,000 families on our waiting list. Nashua Housing owned units, we have 4,000 families on the waiting list. Monahan Manor got redeveloped, Bronstein got redeveloped to Monahan Manor, and 216 units. All the units are occupied. Took about maybe 4 or 5 months to occupy. We have 2,000 families on that waiting list. We need units. It's critical. It's an emergency. There are families, there are homeless families. Another thing that hadn't been mentioned is we have 100 or so families living at Maynard Homes right now. I would ask that they talk to the residents of Bronstein when they were relocated. Every single family had an opportunity to get a voucher to move. They could go any place in the 50 states in this country of their choice, and many did. They had, we paid, Nashua Housing and Redevelopment Authority and our partners, Tremont, paid for the relocation, moving expenses, and not only did we pay for their moving expenses too, but we paid for their moving expenses back. Each unit has air conditioning. It's been 100 degrees the last couple of weeks. They got air conditioning in those units. Each unit has a washer and dryer. These are people of very low income, and they've got an opportunity. And this is very similar to what we want to do at Maynard Homes. Again, I'm speaking for the 170-plus families that haven't been mentioned yet. We've been there. The buildings can't be redone, redeveloped, or the existing buildings can't. We've done a study. It's come back and said you got to tear them down. So we looked at this and did another study to see if this development could withstand actually 370 units. And it could. But we listened to the neighbors, we listened to the residents. And I find it a little bit disingenuous, what we're hearing. We've worked with the resident council. We've worked, we met with the neighbors. And I don't remember if we met a second time, but if they say we didn't, we didn't. But we listened to them, and we made these changes. We knew that they had water issues in their basement. We've done everything humanly possible that we could do to rectify, at least get the ball rolling, to rectify the situation. I'm very proud of this plan that was submitted in front of this board tonight. And I hope you look favorably. And I know it's not perfect, but what is perfect? But for the most important thing is, as I have said to the residents that are at Maynard Homes, they're the most important. The 100 or so families that are there now, they're the most important. So we have to make sure, as we did at Bronstein, we have to make sure that they are comfortable in the move. Some, again, at Bronstein, half the families have opted to stay where they opted to go to. They've stayed there. They've gone from, some 20 states outside of New Hampshire, and they've opted to stay, and that's great. And so it was actually an opportunity for the residents. And coming back to what Maynard's going to be, we're going to have 30% of AMI. Nobody offers that. 50% of AMI, 60% of AMI. And we're going to, someone mentioned we're going to have market rate units. Yes, we are going to have market rate units. We want market rate units. We want people that go from 30 to 50 to 60, and they don't have to leave because they don't qualify. They can stay. They can stay in the units that at 100% market rate units. They don't have to leave. If they like it there, the kids are in school, whatever it is, they can stay. We've thought about that. And so I just, I'm very proud of it, and I certainly hope you look favorably. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other members of the audience wishing to speak in favor of this application? Certainly.
My name is Christy Basada. I live at 12 Nutmeg Drive in Nashua. I am representing myself tonight, but I am also clergy and also part of the Interfaith Housing Justice Task Force that Reverend Newhall is also a part of. I think there are many good parts of this plan. I think there's not a person in this room who does not know we need more affordable housing. There's plenty of evidence to support mixed income housing as something that really supports the needs of lower income people. What I think is concerning here is treatment of people, because it's one thing to sit in a room and say, we've heard you, and it's another to be literally responsive to those needs. And so I too was involved with the relocation at Bronstein, and I can tell you that there was relocation money offered, and it was insufficient. And if you're physically disabled, you can't physically move your own things. And so I don't exactly know what your role is, if it's really just around land use code, if it's really around the ethical issues of how people are treated, whether they're neighbors, whether they're tenants, whether they've been heard but not heeded. But I guess I'm asking if there is a way to provide accountability from the city to make sure that people are treated like people and not just handed $1,000 and told to move on and then not able to move back. That would be so very important in this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, at this point in the hearing, if there's anyone in the audience that wishes to speak in favor of this application, please come forward. All right. Sir, you're here to speak in favor of this application? Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Yes. Yeah, my name is Bob Keating, 5 Coburn Woods, and I'm a member of Granite State Organizing Project. And I just want to say, I think that the complex issue, but clearly that this project is extremely important to the people, as we always start, that are living there. But as the redevelopment authority is moving to attempt to add additional, housing, and that, as some of you may know, or maybe you don't know, that it's actually illegal in the United States to build any more public housing since the Faircloth Amendment. So to build affordable housing, you can only replace that which is needs to be replaced. So in this case, it would be the 110 units. The rest of it is really part of a very complex financing process of it. So hearing the voices of Major Drive over the period of time, I was not aware of a number of things. Most of it I had heard before. So I'm not sure, how the process is, but I think there had been movement and continuing movement to try to address the voices of Major Drive. I can't speak any more than what was said today. So I don't know in your deliberations how you move on that. And certainly heard the very detailed and responses about concerned about within the neighborhood. But I would just hate to see this end at this this point in time, and I just think that if there needs to be more time for people to continue to speak, then I would hope that that would be possible in the process, because I do think that there can be things that can make it so that this becomes viable, or as I really do think it is a viable project, and I do think that there's been efforts, but again, this is complex, as in almost all of our discussions from Major Drive and GSOP, is to say the people who are living there now are the people who are most affected, and then next obviously is the neighbors, and the Major Drive residents are the ones that will carry the most burden, if you will, because they have to move out of their house to provide for others, if that's the final resolution. So I may be trying to pull in all particular kinds of sides, but I hope this just continues to do, because I don't think, and please correct me if it's otherwise, that there was a decision made to not support the idea.
I'm sorry, sir, if you could just speak into the microphone and address the board. Thank you.
I'm sorry. Thank you. So I was looking for confirmation from the group.
No, and I understand that, and I think where we are right now, we're taking commentary from the public that's in favor of the project, and we've heard all the testimony this evening, and I do appreciate your commentary, but I think at some point we're going to have to give the applicant an opportunity to respond to what was said here tonight. So, this is a land use board. We're here to hear testimony about land use issues.
Right.
So,
okay.
Thank you. Any members of the public that would like to definitively speak in favor of this project? Okay, seeing none, no further. I'm going to give the applicant's team, Morgan, Jim, please feel free to respond to any and all that you've heard previously.
Mr. Chair?
Oh, Dan, yes.
I was just going to ask if they wanted a 5-minute recess to prep. I'd
that would
welcome
be,
but
that would actually,
given that
Mr.
we've had a
Hudson, thank
long-
you for the interjection there.
Yeah.
Yes, we shall call, we'll call a recess. We'll say come back at 8:50. 8:50? All right, so we are in recess at 8:39. right, we're gonna come back from recess and provide the applicant's team an opportunity to respond. So Jim, whenever you're ready, go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With your permission, we would like to do our best to respond to the questions and comments in the following manner. I'm going to try to work through some of the engineering and technical comments. I tried to take good notes. And then if, with your permission, Mr. Chairman, Attorney Hollis is going to follow up and kind of fill in the blanks of the things I may have missed.
Certainly.
I counted 6 people in opposition. One woman came up twice. So, and it's, you know, doing this for 40 years, it's always challenging and tough. You see a project in a neighborhood, and change is always challenging. And, you know, we're here this evening to do our best to answer questions. You may not like the answers, but we're going to try to give them to you in the most direct, honest manner. The first speaker spoke about community space in Building 3. Sam, if you could come back to the colored rendering, I think it's a couple up from that. Previous to that, yeah. Next one. Yeah, thank you. So Building 3 is that building that runs north-south on the left. The community room will measure 3,000 square feet in size. She mentioned availability of the apartments, the logistics of once phase 1 is built, can those 5 units that exist in phase 2 move into phase 1? And our client indicated to me during break that, you know, that would be ideal as long as, you know, they're compliant with the criteria of moving in. And she spoke from amenities about the proposal. We've been through those amenities as well. Apparently I stand corrected. I thought Head Start was in that small building for a number of years. I guess they haven't been the last couple of months, but that small building will remain. The next speaker, I believe from Resident Council, spoke about needing more time and not being better communicated. A plan like this is filed, you know, probably 2 months ago. Public notices went out 10 days ago. We live in an age of the interweb and such, and all the plans and traffic reports and information was shown on the plan. I will follow up by saying that I have had the good fortune of representing Nashua Redevelopment and Housing and Redevelopment Authority for a number of years, and their door is always open. And even beyond tonight, this project will take a while if permitted. This project will take a while to get started, and I'm sure that questions and comments, even after this hearing, the Housing Authority will be happy to address those. The third speaker, Mr. Rose, had no less than 22 comments. I will do my best to try to answer as many as I could. He asked about traffic. Again, the traffic report was brought up on the city website. It is included, and he's certainly welcome to read it. The speed limit sign, you know, it's tough to control drag racing. It's an illegal act. I know from a personal standpoint that when I'm driving and I see that light flashing, I, as a responsible driver, if I'm exceeding the speed limit, I try to slow down, and I think most responsible drivers will do the same. So I actually think the speed limit sign would be a good addition to Burke Street, given its straightness. He liked the rapid rectangular flashing beacons, which is good. We think that'll be an improvement for safety. There is a bus stop located on this property, and so to safely get people to cross Burke Street is a good thing. Peak roofs, I stand corrected. I apologize for that misrepresentation. They are pitched roofs, but the height is to the peak that I mentioned on the 3-story and the 4-story, so I stand corrected there. With regard to height, I know there's a number of 3-story buildings in the neighborhood. in the Resi neighborhood across the street. Not all of them, but there's a number of them, as well as Wagner Court to the west, which is an elderly housing facility, is also 3 stories in height. I will mention a fact, and that is in the RC district, I believe up to 10 stories, and it may be 12, Sam, are allowed in the RC zone. So these folks have been abutters to the RC zone. The mixed-use overlay district doesn't change that, but 10 to 12 stories are allowed in this zone. I'm not advocating that they build those towers. I'm just citing a fact that that's what's allowed in the zone. The southwest recreational area the gentleman referred to, there's a large significant tree there that we tried to preserve, so shifting building 6 towards it we felt would impact it, and we thought that would be a nice location for a picnic and grilling area, and that's why we reserved that space. Construction traffic, vibrations, dust control, those are very good comments. And as a resident on that street, we would want, if I were a resident there, I'd want consideration to be taken into that. The project will be fenced during construction. I would suggest to our client that that fence be lined with a fabric such as prevents at least low flying dust. They do work. I think that would be a good thing. And I got a feeling that prior to construction, there'll be communications between Nashua Housing and Redevelopment Authority and the abutters to let them know what's going on. Pest, wildlife control, termites, I think that's all part of the demolition process where they come in and hire a critter control type group to humanely remove wildlife before the demolition process starts. Wastewater, we are adding units. We'll be adding wastewater to the system. I don't believe there's a capacity with the wastewater lines. It's the problem that they're combined, that when that peak rain events, that's when the backups occur. So we're trying to work on this project towards eliminating runoff from this site going into the streets and then helping the city with a future plan to separate sewers and drains. Fencing will remain to the south of the property. Newer fencing, that fencing's quite dated. There is a steep embankment that leads down into Joyce Park, so the gentleman spoke in favor of that, which is good. With regard to utilities and taxes and such, utilities, everything's a private site. It will be a private site. All that will be the responsibility of National Housing and Redevelopment Authority. In terms of maintenance of the roads, trash pickup, they will hire a management company to perform all of those duties. The gentleman brought forward the curbing that is being demolished. I just received a recent communication from the City of Engineering Department asking that all the curbing in Major and Spalding be brought to their campus over at 840 West Hollis Street, so it will remain property of the city. And then lastly, he spoke to parking, 1.6 spaces per unit. You know, there's a range really with apartment parking and a lot of different factors that go into it. There's proximity to urban areas, walkability, things like that. We view Bronstein as an urban project. This is not necessarily a rural project, but I wouldn't call it as urban and as dense as Bronstein. It does have proximity to Main Street. It is walkable. And so working with staff, we tried to find the sweet spot of parking. We actually would like a little more. Staff would like a little less. I think we landed at 1.6, and I think we're both comfortable with that. The fourth speaker, a woman named Valerie, spoke about a grocery store and drainage issues. We are downstream from Burke Street. We are draining away from Burke Street. We are not contributing to Burke Street. I suspect her issues are with Burke Street, and again, they're above us. If you look at this drawing, all our collection of stormwater is being collected and directed over to that green arrow over to the right side. They spoke to architectural issues. Beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. I can't address their opinions on whether they like the architecturals or not. The fifth speaker, Margaret, 68 Burke Street, asked about a buffer impact. There is no buffer impact to Salmon Brook. The property is fenced along the southerly line. It's maintained lawn to the southerly line. We're not encroaching beyond that. Salmon Brook does carry with it its 250-foot shoreline protection district, and abutters were notified that we've made an application to New Hampshire DES for that. We're actually lessening the amount of pavement within that 250-foot area than what currently exists today. So that might have been the reason she brought that comment up, but we are not tree clearing or disturbing anything off our property or anything along the brook. She spoke to drainage impacts, which I think we talked about quite well. She asked why not build these apartments down at the end of Burke Street. That's industrial zone land. That land is not zoned right in the city of Nashua. Nashua Housing Authority does not own that property. The next speaker, Victoria from Manchester, asked about the meeting space. She corrected me on the Head Start. She advocated for less parking. She was asking about a second community room, of which there is not. There's only the one community room in the project that measures about 3,000 square feet, as I said. So I try to do my best to answer the technical stuff on those 6 speakers. I'm going to allow Attorney Hollis maybe to come up and fill in the blanks unless you have any questions about my responses.
Questions for Mr. Petropoulos at this time? No? Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Jim, thank you. I really don't have anything to add. I think he covered all the questions. I was checking them all off as he went through them, so I think it might be useful if any of the planning board has questions of any particular areas. We do have, as I mentioned, the architect and the traffic engineer here. All those reports are available and have been presented. We did, in fact, have a study which was not presented to you as it was not required, but it was a study done on valuation because of the concern of the neighbors of putting these buildings, particularly in the Ingalls Street area, but also on Burke Street, evaluating impacts on adjacent properties when higher story buildings, 3- and 4-story buildings went up. And in particular, this study looked at the property, as you know, off of East Hollis Street. There are some 4-story buildings east of the McDonald's area that went up a number of years back, and they were backed up to a residential neighborhood. And the evaluation was done by Chet Rogers, and it included an analysis of whether property values of those properties that immediately abutted those high-rise buildings, and they were high-rise for that time, 4 stories, whether there was an adverse impact, and the answer was no, there was not. And in fact, those buildings look into the backyards of some of those people, and there are privacy issues everywhere you go, as the lady who asked the question and raised the concern. If you're 2.5 stories and you're overlooking a ranch, you're seeing your neighbor's backyard. But with the location of these buildings and the distance on Ingalls Street going 80 feet back and having green space in front, that was a purposeful design that arose out of the concern of those people on Ingalls Street of having a taller building closer to their home. So we've done that. On Burke Street, there are 3 stories. There are, as Jim mentioned, a number of 3-story buildings, again, included in the analysis by Mr. Rogers, in that immediate neighborhood. The average is 2.5 stories, but 2.5 stories is in fact a 3-story building when you have residential use of the half-story, the gable of so many of these older buildings. So we don't believe it's out of character. We think it's in character. Other than that, though, really, the only other question I could probably answer is the question about the matter of who pays for should the city be paid because these public ways are going to become private. And the law is that almost every public way, particularly back in 1948, every public way is by easement. It's an easement over private property. The private property in Major Drive is owned by the Housing Authority, so when a public way is discontinued, the roadway goes back to the owner. there isn't any compensation involved. So that's really my answer to that question. Other than that, if anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to sort of call up someone who might answer it better, if I don't know the answer. Thank you.
Questions? Mr. Hudson, please.
Yeah, just two things, I guess. The first is, I think I heard a speaker ask about impacts to elementary schools. How would you address that?
There's a nearby elementary school. We did not perform a study.
And then secondly, just for the record, I think I would like the traffic engineer to come up and just speak to the analysis that was done in terms of trip generation and summarize that in a little more detail than was presented.
Okay, certainly.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is Jason Plord, traffic engineer with Vanass, Hangen, Brusla, and VHB. We had prepared some preliminary information. What we had done was we had estimated site trips for the existing 110 apartment units that are out there. We compared that to the proposed 274 multifamily homes, all based on Institute of Transportation Engineers trip generation information. We provided that comparison to Wayne Husband, the senior traffic engineer for the city. And what that information showed was that we then compared that delta, the increase in traffic, to the city standards. The city's thresholds for the preparation of a traffic study are based on the peak hour of adjacent street traffic, the peak hour of the development, or also known as the peak hour of the generator, and on a weekday daily basis or a Saturday daily basis. There are different thresholds for each one of those conditions, and we don't trigger any of those. That's not just based on my methodology, that's based on standard traffic engineering practice, not taking any shortcuts or anything like that. That's straight ITE trip generation rates. And so what we had done was we had prepared that information, provided that to Mr. Husband, and then we coordinated with Mr. Husband and asked him, is there any additional information that you would like to see? Even though we're not hitting those thresholds, what else, what other information would you like? So we had prepared a traffic assessment. That traffic assessment got into more detail about the trip generation methodology. We then distributed those additional trips on the adjacent roadway system using U.S. Journey to Work data, with the place of residency being the city of Nashua and where people drive to. So it's distributing those cars with the central point being this site and where are they going to and what roadways are they using. I didn't want to have any bias at all with the distribution of those cars, so I used MapQuest to be able to go from point A to point B, so that it actually took cars and took them onto the roadway system without me having any influence over the direction of the distribution of the traffic. We then coordinated with the police department. We collected traffic crash data at the different intersections in the surrounding area. I had several phone calls with the police department to make sure that we understood, are there any safety concerns out here? Within the traffic assessment, we do have the traffic data for each one of those intersections tabulated. So that was between 2021 and 2023. So over a 3-year period, all spelled out of the different crashes. The police department did warn me that some of the crashes that have been recorded may not have occurred at an intersection and may have occurred in a parking lot nearby and just was associated with that landmark being the intersection. So all that information is within the traffic study that we submitted to the city. As a result, there were some, I want to say, more safety improvements that were identified than traffic control devices or shovel in the ground improvements. And those were talking about, as you heard earlier this evening, about putting in those RRFBs, the rectangular rapid flashing beacons at the crosswalks. They were talking about even putting in those driver speed feedback signs. We're fine with those. They did not come from us. Those came from city officials that asked us, would you consider putting those in? We said, yes, we'll do those. Anything we can do to be able to help slow down the cars out there. I think that at one point, the city was investigating different types of improvements at the crosswalks, maybe even having some bump outs. But that, I believe, my understanding is that that did not proceed from different communication efforts that took place between the city and residents at that time. I don't even know how long ago that was. That might have been 5 years, 10 years. I honestly don't know. But that was something that was decided between the city and the residents not to pursue. So that's where the driver feedback signs came into play. That's where the RRFBs came into play as well.
Questions on traffic from the board? Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Flores.
Thank you.
Well, we're still in public meeting. Other questions for the applicant's team? Alderman Clee, please.
Thank you. I don't know who would answer this. It's just kind of a general question. We talk a lot about green space, so my question is, what is the difference between the amount of green space that currently exists, which seems to be quite significant, versus how much will, once the project is done? I know you talked about that there was going to be some community space and grilling and so on, but I based on what I've seen, it doesn't really look like there's going to be a whole lot. So I'm just kind of curious as to what is the that type of what is the loss of green space, I guess, is what I'm groping at.
Yeah, Jim Petropoulos, Hainer Swanson, I had to search for it. I don't think I have the answer to your question. I think we probably, my intuition is we probably has slightly less open space than currently exists, but I want to call your attention to in the RC zone, where 35% of the land area of that 13 acres, 14 acres needs to be open space. You know, we're providing 45%. So we well exceed the criteria in the RC zone. You know, clearly it's a different type of housing when you compare the 12 smaller buildings in street parking to the bigger buildings in the more traditional apartment layout parking spaces. It appears that there's less. I would think the numbers would be comparable, but from day one in working with staff, it wanted to be meaningful open space. It wanted to be protection along Ingalls, community garden, tot lots. The picnic area was something that was important to the city. And so we think our plan balances, to the best of our ability, all those elements that went into open space.
I'll find answers. I just wanted to, so it sounds like it's more specified green space, and rather than just having kind of open areas that it currently exists. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Hudson.
Just to follow up on the parking item. There was a description about, you know, currently people visit the areas and they have to park on the street or something. Are there dedicated visitor parking spots in the development, or is basically all spots available for first come, first serve for anybody?
Yes, first come, first serve, all spots available.
Thank you.
They're not numbered.
Thank you.
Other questions from the board? All right, last chance. All right. Okay, seeing none at this time, I'm going to close the public hearing. Welcome to hear your thoughts on this. We heard a lot of testimony this evening. I see a lot of positive things about this application, but obviously I'd be looking forward to hearing your thoughts on the matter. Scott, please.
I guess I'll address a couple of different things. One is I'll start with the city's master plan, which, you know, a lot of us in this room and a lot of the people in the city spent a lot of time over the last few years putting together. And what came out of that was this very high need for this type of housing. I mean, it was right there at the top of the list of the master plan, and there was hundreds, if not thousands, of people in the city that were involved, that were providing input, saying we need more of this. So, I think the plan, in my opinion, is very consistent with the master plan, including the height. And I understand people don't like height, but there's a lot of positives of height. One is green space, right? So the two trade off. So if you go higher, you have more opportunity for green space. If you go lower, you lose it. I mean, it's just math. That's kind of how it works. There was a couple of comments about making the ones in the middle even higher. I mean, I understand once you get above 5 stories, you end up getting into what are high-rise codes and things like that, and the prices of the buildings go way up. And understanding the type of project this is, I think driving the costs up are probably not great, because it's sort of opposite to what we're trying to do here. So I think that looks pretty good to me. I do like the use of the green space kind of around the outside. I think the improvements on the drainage side, I mean, I've been on this board for like more than a decade. I'm trying to remember the last time anybody put in a stormwater system that they didn't need that was for the city. And I know, Dan, you haven't been the city engineer forever, but I've been in a lot of these, like hundreds of these meetings, and I actually can't remember one. So that's like a big deal, I think. I don't know if people realize that how much money that is that's being put into the project that is not even for the project. It's for the rest of the city and the people around it. So to me, that's a big deal. We don't see that much in this board, so I thought that was a pretty big effort on their part. That definitely gives the city an opportunity to attack the combined sewer issue, which is a big deal. It's a tough job to fix it, but I don't know, maybe you can comment later, Dan, on how much easier it will be to fix the combined sewer in the surrounding area by what they're doing with the stormwater system that's being created here. So I like that part of it. You know, as far as the looks, it seems pretty consistent to me to School Street. It seems pretty consistent to Gateway Hills. It seems pretty consistent to the river front areas by Hudson. I mean, you know, it seems pretty consistent to what's being proposed for the Mohawk site. I mean, like, we have a lot of projects that are going on. Temple Street, all of those are kind of in the same vein as this project. So it would be a little bit weird for me to say this looks out of space with the multifamily housing that's being done in Nashua, because the last at least dozen projects that I've been involved with on the board look like this. We're very similar. So I think we're just changing what multifamily looks like, and maybe people are not on board, but I think it looks similar to what we've been doing. So that's my quick comments right there. So.
Thank you, Scott. Alderman Clee?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have positive comments. I'm going to start with where you kind of ended in the looks, and I absolutely 100% agree. They are consistent with what we're seeing being built, and I don't think that's necessarily a good thing. To be honest with you, I don't think it's a good thing. And recently, the city had some contractors that kind of came in and spoke to us about, you know, changing zoning laws and changing looks and so on. And one of the things that when I spoke to them, they kind of commented to was that maybe we need to kind of change some of these buildings and not always have them. So for developers that are out there that are listening, you know, maybe kind of change it up a little bit. I know there's costs involved, and these looks are less expensive, and they kind of go up easier and so on. But in the grand scheme of things, I don't want my city really looking like this. I'm not going to say no to this design because of this, but I don't like the look of it, and I don't think the neighbors like the look of it. I would like to actually see it kind of almost look like homes within the area, make some design that makes it fit within the neighborhood. And actually the contractors that kind of came in and spoke to us said that we should actually, as a city, be looking at designs that fit within the homes. Even when we're building bigger buildings, we should be looking at it. So yes, these looks are consistent, And truthfully, I'm driving through Merrimack, I'm seeing the same type. I don't like it. So I'm going to put my 2 cents in and say, and I do hope developers are listening and probably got their fingers in their ears, but I have to say it. So, but, I do want to address some of the concerns. I do understand people looking into your backyards. I live in a neighborhood that home after home after home, and my poor neighbors have to put up with me looking into their yards because I have a raised ranch, and my deck looks into every one of my neighbors' yards. So to give them privacy, kind of put up a fence on my deck so that they don't see me looking into their yards, to kind of protect me as well as them. So I understand that whole privacy issue. It's uncomfortable. I don't want to listen to their conversations, even though I'm hearing them and so on. But that's kind of what happens the closer we get. And the larger the population we're getting, that is what happens. And as Mr. Monahan spoke, the city needs more units. It's kind of hard to say, we can't do this. So while the ethical part of me wants to say, let's keep everything the way it is, let's not build anymore, we have to take the space that we have and build up. I don't want to see 5 and 10. I actually don't want to see 4, but it is what it is, and I want to see up, and I don't want to see across, and I want to see more green space. So this is the compromise that I think that we have to make. It's a hard decision to make, but this board doesn't get to make the ethical decision. This board has to make the land use decision, as we've all had to make that painful decision before. If this were a complete green space and we were building up, maybe I could make a different decision, but that's kind of the way it is. I love the idea that these are going to be air-conditioned units and washer and dryer. And I have a unique position from the others here on the board. I'm an alderman, and I can tell you, I have constituents that are living, as far as I'm concerned, in housing that I wouldn't let my dogs live in. Okay? So when I see that there are units that are going to be built that have air conditioners and washers and dryers, all within the living space they're living in, I'm excited. And when I see that there's a 30% and a 50% and a 60% in market rate, all within the community that they're living in, and we're all living together, and they can stay within their unit when their income changes, they've bettered themselves and they don't have to leave their place. I'm excited about that. So that has nothing to do with land use code. That was my alderman hat on. And I just have to say that this is something that, yes, it's going to hurt some people, and I'm so sorry for that. But I'm so excited for someone that's going to move out of that substandard housing and is going to be able to live here. So for this reason, land use reason, I have to vote for it. And as an alderman, in my hat on, I'm going to have to support something like this. So thank you for giving me the time.
Thank you, Alderman Klee. Other members of the board? Mr. Hudson.
Yeah, I'll speak to the drainage point that was raised, and it is true. We are very, the city longs to do separation in some of these neighborhoods where we have combined sewer flow because we understand the impacts of it. But we really were hamstrung by not having a place to take the stormwater. So this does unlock future projects for us, basically. We'll be able to, as funding and everything, of course, constraints allow, but we'll be able to go into these neighborhood streets that abut this area and do sewer separation, which will address those issues. So the developer met with us, and we're great working with us in terms of working out some of the details of the sizing of the drainage pipe and the grade, and we're trying to set it as low as we can to enable us to carry those improvements as far as we can outward from the trunk line. So it is a little unprecedented, or maybe very unprecedented to have that sort of thing be added to a project to benefit the city, but it is truly appreciated. So I just wanted to expand upon that.
Thank you. Other members of the board? Okay. Well, I think we're someone be willing to make a motion? Obviously, we've heard a lot of testimony tonight. I appreciate the feedback from the board, but we've got two different applications. Case 824-0118 is with regard to the subdivision. And it would probably make the most sense to take that one first if someone was so inclined.
I'll start with that.
Certainly, Scott, go right ahead.
All right, so with respect to that, the application for the subdivision, I would first start with a motion that the request for a waiver from 190-28152 be granted. And actually, maybe you can correct me, Sam, is the right section for that 190-282B9?
The correct section is 190-282B9. The 28152, that is the design review section of the code.
Okay.
So this is actually the formal submission to the planning board section of the code that we'd be waiving.
All right, so I'll make the motion specific to the waiver of 190-282B9. That motion be granted. And that as part of that motion that we are taking into consideration the criteria listed in the staff report.
All right, there is a motion by Mr. Leclerc with respect to the waiver request. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second, Alderman Clee. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
I'll make a second motion with respect to the subdivision for this application, in that we grant conditional subdivision approval for the three-lot subdivision at 101 Major Drive, finding that the subdivision does meet the approval criteria under 190-138G, and that the approval include the precedent and subsequent conditions as indicated in the staff report.
Thank you. Motion by Mr. Leclerc. Is there a second? Second, Alderman Clee. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Subdivision is approved. Scott, would you consider making a motion for the site plan?
Yeah, regarding the site plan, I will start first with a motion regarding the waiver for 190-279. Is that EE, Sam? Is that right? That one?
1 second. I believe it is.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll make the motion that we do grant that waiver, and that as part of the approval, we are taking into consideration the criteria listed in the staff report.
I apologize. Is that EE or EU?
190-279-EE.
EE.
Yeah,
Okay.
190-279.EE.
EE, okay. I'll second that.
All right. Motion by Mr. Leclerc, second by Alderman Clee. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Scott, if you'd like to continue. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll make a second or motion with regard to the site plan application regarding the dimensional modification requested at the density maximum detailed in section 190-16, and that we approve that as well. Find that application and the associated suitability report meet the guidelines for the site plan under 190-23.f.
All right. Thank you. There's a motion to grant the dimensional modification, as noted by Mr. Leclerc. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Hirsch. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
And I will make one more motion regarding the conditional site plan approval for this application and for the redevelopment of 101 Major Drive. And that we find that the site plan does meet the approval criteria under section 190-146D with the precedent and subsequent conditions as indicated in the staff report.
Thank you. Motion by Mr. Leclerc with respect to granting the conditional site plan approval. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Hirsch. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Site plan approved.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right, moving on in the agenda. Under new business site plan, case number A24-0121, project located at 116 Elm Street. If there is a representative of the applicant for that project, please come forward.
Let's take jurisdiction. Can we wait a second? Sure, can we wait a second?
Folks, I just want to point out, we do have other cases to hear tonight, so if you're not part of the next case for 116 Elm, if you can continue your discussions outside, that'd be greatly appreciated. Thank you. Wait a second. You can't lock it, but we'll make sure it's closed. Okay, all right. That's it. All right, I'm sorry. Go right ahead.
Wait, we gotta do jurisdiction.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. I was
Jumping the gun.
I was so excited. All right. Has any member of the board had an opportunity to review and determine if the board can accept jurisdiction over case A24-0121? Mr. Leclerc,
Sure,
please.
yeah, I'll make a motion that we accept jurisdiction of 824-0070.
All right. Is there a second? Second, Mr. Hirsch. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I think the number was wrong.
Did I get there?
A24-0121.
0121.
Oh, I'm looking at the wrong thing.
Oh.
What's the?
0121.
0121.
Oh, my thing has a different number, that's right. So it's A24-0121.
That's correct.
Oh, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong line. Yep. I'll amend to that.
That's
Is
okay.
there a second on that?
Yeah, there was a second by Mr. Hirsch. Will you still second?
Yes.
Go out on a limb? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Now you may come forward. I'm sorry for the administrative delay there. Just want to state your name for the record.
Sure. My name is Dan Flores with SFC Engineering at 183 Rockingham Road, Windham, New Hampshire. I'm here on behalf of 116 Elm Street LLC for conversion of the funeral home at Elm Street to a 4-unit apartment. I have a plan here on the screen that's the existing conditions. This is a small lot, about 0.21 acres. Again, that is a funeral home today that's inoperable. The building is from about 1930. It's a 2-story building, about 3,500 square feet. The main entrance is off the Elm Street sidewalk. There's also a side entrance with a ramp from the parking lot area. And there's a further entrance up on the back of the site at the top of the page. Today, that parking lot is for 14 cars. The lot perimeter has some grass you can see in green. The brown areas are landscaped with mulch and some evergreen plantings. If you could switch the page, please. Thank you. So again, this is to convert the existing building to 4-unit apartments. We have very limited site work in order to make this happen, which I've called out with the numbers here. The first one, number 1, we're reconfiguring the parking to be angled, and we provide 9 spaces where 6 are required. That's one of the waivers tonight. This allows us to remove pavement at the front, which you can see is number 2. It also allows us to remove some pavement sidewalk in the back. With the redevelopment, the back door is no longer required, so we pick up some more green area back there. In all, this results in a 20% increase in open space over what's there today. Number 3, this configuration allows placement of the dumpster, as you can see there. And number 4, the ramp will be extended down a bit to meet ADA grade requirements. Overall, this results in an improvement to the lot. We do have 7 waivers before you for this. Basically, they all come down to there's very little impact to the site that we're requesting, and such. These waivers have been requested. We do have comments. Planning comment was about placement of a tree in the lower left corner. The owners are definitely on board with that. We also have engineering comments. We see no issues at all addressing any of them. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions from the board? Mr. Leclerc?
Just a quick one regarding the dumpster. I can't, can you give me details on the enclosure of it? You have an enclosure, right?
There is a note stating enclosure. Nothing is shown on the plan, but certainly that will be constructed per city requirements.
Okay. Yeah, that'll be required. Yep.
Other questions from the board? Mr. Hudson?
Yeah, I just appreciate elaboration on the tree. I would note that, and maybe this is a planning versus engineering thing, but engineering is concerned about site distance from the, at the Elm Street, Lake Street intersection, so I just want to make sure that that tree doesn't conflict with site distance. What do we envision for a tree?
Yeah, the request is to place the tree on the wall side, so the parking side of the sidewalk. That placement shouldn't have any impact on the site distance.
Other members of the board? All right, seeing none. Open it up to the public. Any members of the public wishing to speak in opposition or with concern to this application? Seeing none. Does any member of the public wish to speak in favor of this application? Seeing none. Flip it back to the board one more time. Any further questions of the applicant before we? All right. Well, seeing none, we're going to close the public hearing. Seems pretty straightforward. I think it's more waivers than we would typically see, but I appreciate the effort of trying to minimize the site work. I imagine that fits into a lot of those requests. But beyond that, obviously, I welcome comments from the rest of the board if you have any.
No, it seems pretty straightforward to me.
Mm-hmm.
Sam, are all the comments up to date with respect to the date of the Joe Mandola letter?
Yes.
Yeah.
I guess maybe a quick question for Dan. One of the waivers was with respect to stormwater management. Just we heard a lot of testimony about stormwater on the last case. Any known issues that you can think of where that would come into play here?
So there was an engineering comment about stormwater in terms of how things would change. There are sections of the ordinances that speak to redevelopments with always a goal to reduce impervious area by 20%. This lot's, with the parking in the building, there's not a lot you can do, but I do appreciate that there are some green areas or some areas being recouped for green space, I guess, that weren't previously. So I think the applicants made a good effort that way. So no, I'm not aware of any other major issues. We did, engineering comments, we do request, to the best of people's knowledge, the sewer service be depicted to match at least what's on file with us, or as they can indicate otherwise through additional investigation. So, but no, it does seem pretty straightforward to us as well. So.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hudson. All right, well, last chance, members of the board? No? All right, if there's no other questions, someone willing to make a motion? Sure. Mr. Leclerc, please.
Yes, sure. So I'll start first with a motion for the waivers, and that we grant the requested waivers for 190-279N, 190-279P, 190-279CC, 190-279EE, 190-198A, 190-193A, and 190-193E, all as written within the staff report here, and that the board recognizes these requests and utilizes the criteria listed within the staff report to make that motion.
All right, thank you. Motion by Mr. Leclerc with respect to granting the waivers. Is there a second on that motion? Second by Mr. Hirsch. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Scott, please continue if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'll make a second motion with this application to grant conditional site plan approval, finding that the plan does meet the requirements outlined in site plan NRO 190-146D with the precedent and subsequent conditions as written in the staff report.
All right, thank you. Motion by Mr. Leclerc to grant conditional site plan approval. Is there a second? Second, Mr. Hirsch. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair and Board. Appreciate it.
All right, next item on the agenda, case A24-0070, project located at 8 State Street and Dumaine Avenue. Has any member of the board had an opportunity to review this application and is willing to make a motion regarding jurisdiction? Mr. Hirsch?
Move to take jurisdiction.
Motion by Mr. Hirsch to accept jurisdiction. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Leclerc. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. All right, if there is a representative for the applicant, please come right up.
How you doing? I'm Bernie Temple, professional engineer working with John Roque. He would have been here, but he's at another meeting. We're representing the owner here to Charlie Morgan, Ocean, what's his name there? State Street LLC. He wants to put an addition on his existing building located off of Dumaine and State Street. The existing building is 148,000 square feet. He wants to add a 18,000 square foot building to the end of it. Has 2 loading bays, and he's going to be adding an additional off-site parking area that's going to be adjacent to the existing parking area. There's the drainage for the site goes into 2 different areas. We have pervious pavement along the front of the new building, and on the off-site parking area, we're doing underground infiltration. The roof system is going to, drainage also goes into a stone and trench infiltration system. So all drainage on the site gets infiltrated into the water, into the ground. We've provided a landscape plan. We did have a few staff comments relative to some of the trees. What else have we got here? We did a traffic study, Steve Pernoy, and we didn't trip any triggers. There's only very minor traffic coming from the site because there's data storage. That's pretty much it. That's what I got for you.
All right, thank you. Questions from members of the board?
There are 2 waivers also we're requesting. One for the existing conditions, 190, 279E, not having to do the survey on all the way except for where the proposed work is. And the other one is for the architectural standards for the site. We're trying to kind of match the existing building so it doesn't look completely different.
Okay, thank you. Throw it back to the board again. Questions from the board at this time? Scott, go ahead, please.
Yeah, just a couple of questions about the building itself. So the elevations, they don't show anything on the roof or anything like that. Is there an intention to have any rooftop equipment?
I don't believe there's any intention. It's a sloped roof.
Okay.
As far as I know, I do not believe there's
Okay.
going to be any rooftop units.
All right. Yeah, I think it would we would require them to be screened if they were. And then, are there any other things being added to the site other than sort of the parking in the building?
No, there's, a sidewalk in front of the new building.
Yeah.
We are connecting to the adjacent parking lot and adding a sidewalk from the new parking lot over to our parking lot.
Okay.
So,
No more dumpsters, no
no more dumpsters.
generators?
There's one existing dumpster on site, that's
Okay.
to remain.
No generators?
No generators. We
Yeah.
are providing a new lighting for this parking lot and the other parking lot with all downcast, dark sky compliant lights.
Okay. What was the height of the building? Just-
I can see, I don't know. I'm going to be honest with you, I don't know. It's 28 feet on the low side, so I'm guessing probably 35 maybe on the front side, because it's a flat sloped roof.
Yeah, the elevation doesn't have dimensions, I don't,
Does it say 32?
is there one somewhere? I'm missing?
On the sheet 3, or sheet,
Oh, there we go. Yep.
sheet 4 of the architecturals.
Yeah, I see the 28 on one side,
It's a
okay.
12-to-1 pitch, so we can figure it out.
Yeah, so, another,
Yeah, so it's actually about 38 feet.
yeah. Okay. That's all the questions I have.
Right. Thank you. Scott, other members of the board? All right. Open it up to the public. Any member of the public here wishing to speak in opposition or with concern? Feel free to come up to the microphone. Thank you, Senator.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and Planning Board members. My name is Julie Moran. I live at 16 Dumaine Avenue. My home is directly opposite from the property, subject to the site plan being considered this evening. First, I want to thank you for your service to the city. After seeing other people speaking here tonight, I can really appreciate the gravity of the decisions that you have to make and how important your role is. So thank you for that. And affording me some 10 minutes or so to speak in opposition of this warehouse proposal being presented. And if you don't object, I'd like to speak just a minute about myself. I am 63 years old, and having moving around quite a bit during my life, this is the 9th state I've lived in. This is the last house I will ever own. I'm not originally from here, but as an avid hiker, New Hampshire is far and away my favorite state, and as circumstance will have it, Nashua is now my final home. Besides my small savings, this tiny house in Dumaine Avenue is the only real thing of value I have. In the end, it met my needs at a price I could afford. Thankfully, my employer allows me to work from home, otherwise I'd be looking at a more than 3-hour commute from Cambridge. And I mention that because there are neighbors around me who, as I do, see Nashua as a bedroom community for people who are employed in the Boston area. And Nashua meets their needs too. When considering the purchase of my house, which was part of a residential neighborhood of small houses originally built in the 1950s, of course I could see the 2 large warehouses directly across from me and also corner to my home. However, there was no way that I could gauge the impact of these warehouse operations on my daily life in my house until now, after living on Dumaine Avenue for a year now. And after hearing about this proposal, I was surprised to learn that with the way the area is now zoned, I live in an industrial park. And I asked how that's possible. Well, this board approved 41 residential condominiums on my street in the last few years, and may eventually approve more. And judging from your discussion about the project about the housing in Nashua and the need for housing, I certainly understand why you would support residential in the city of Nashua. So if you could show the first photo, I want to show, this is the actual site where the warehouse is going to go. This yellow van was recently placed there, I believe by the petitioner, because they want to clear out this house, I believe. But it's a fairly attractive residential property. It's lined with trees on the right of it, as you can see, and these flowering trees in the front yard. If you could switch the photo too, please. And that's my house across the street. My neighbors and I take great care of our front facades, the shrubbery, and taking care of the appearance of the lot that faces the street. So my question was, how can mixing residential project and industrial park all on the same street make sense? And the planning department's report to you this evening explains it, that the zoning map, I'm preaching to the choir here, was approved nearly 75 years ago. So according to the report, and I'm quoting here, residential properties converted to commercial uses, creating the commercial zone along the corridor, referring to Amherst Street, a mixed overlay district was later added to allow more flexible uses in the zone. The more flexible uses means, of course, residential, which I discussed. I learned from the developer of the 31 condo units you recently approved at the end of the street, he plans to at least double that on the other side of the street, but that's if he can sell the 31 units he has. He's sold 5 so far. Across the street over Deerwood Avenue, there's 163 apartments, 56 condos, and single-family homes, and these residents regularly walk up and down my street. I also learned that a new residential development was all part of the Imagine Nashua plan, which envisions multifamily projects around the city, including the ones right on my street. This vision of new residential in Nashua makes sense. Of course, housing in the Boston area we know is extremely tight, extremely expensive, so southern New Hampshire gives people like myself an affordable means to buy a home, invest in the city somewhere near their employer. This is the kind of growth I was told Nashua was looking for. It's good for the tax base, but it also feeds the growing commercial district along Amherst Street, which was referenced in the planning department's report. But this overlay zoning means that Nashua's zoning laws also allows both residential and industry mixed together on my street. And in fact, the very week I moved in, people were knocking on my door, canvassing the neighborhood to oppose a crematorium around the corner from me in this small house from where I live. And you can imagine, I just moved in, I said, this is crazy. And I'm from New York, so I don't know, I'm not used to, I don't know, New Hampshire maybe? I was trying to figure it out. How my neighbors and I will ask how this will affect my home that I just bought on Dumaine Avenue, not to mention the safety and the security of the neighborhood. And now I see the traffic from the existing warehouses already there, that the petitioner had built previous to the proposal tonight. The petitioner's report states there's very little regular day-to-day traffic in and out other than a limited amount of employees coming in and out of the parking lots on State Street. And a traffic study, which was not posted until 2 days ago on the Planning Board website, in my opinion, is a farce because it refers to NHDOT data and patterns on Amherst Street, not traffic on Domain Avenue or State Street that this warehouse activity will center on. It was a software-driven attempt to predict future traffic volumes without even knowing what kind of operation will actually exist in this industrial warehouse. This traffic study cannot consider the type and risks associated with the truck traffic that will accrue to the existing daily traffic resulting from the petitioner's previous warehouse projects nearby. And if you could turn on photo 3, please. This is in front of my house. This is a constant daily stream of tractor trailers and vans of all sizes and types that use Domain Avenue that is as straight as a drag strip, a street with no sidewalks or speed limit signs. If you could switch this 4. There are Amazon trucks and 18-wheelers that bomb up and down my street routinely, day and night, literally whizzing by families, walking dogs, and pushing strollers. The traffic study takes none of that into account. I worry less about the truck drivers than about the employees that get into their cars after a long shift and hightail it down the street. More than once, I've almost got hit by one of them. The safety impact that this additional warehouse operation will have on this neighborhood is incalculable, not to mention having a likely severe impact on the value of my new home and of my neighbors' homes. On top of that, the planning department proposes to allow waivers to 2 regulations. One refers to the drawings that show the relationship of adjacent properties, while the latter law requires architectural and aesthetic standards for non-residential buildings. To me, these waivers literally ignore me and other owners on the street who care for the real estate value and the aesthetic quality of our homes. And by the way, I believe this request is also disrespectful to the city and Imagine Nashua vision for this neighborhood and my street. Which leads me to the worst thing about this project being proposed this evening is the company that proposes it. I understand this is a firm based in Manchester, not Nashua. The developer doesn't live on my street and doesn't care about the future of my neighborhood or how I want to spend the last chapter of my life on Domain Avenue or the value of my house or anybody else's house in the neighborhood. Some months back, I was told by a Mr. and Mrs. Grice who rented the house that you previously saw that the petitioner now proposes to demolish to build another warehouse. They requested to build a new home on the site and the petitioner told them no. So the people were forced out and the house now stands empty. The warehouse on State Street the petitioner has developed is within direct eyesight, obviously, to my front yard. A block west of my house, the warehouse that's there now holds a records management firm. This business operates an industrial paper shredder that regularly releases bits of paper which the wind carries, depositing bits of trash on all the residential lawns on Domain Avenue. Part of the reason for this is because the company, to create a lot, cut down beautiful trees that were across the street, leaving piles of debris on the property to create a dirt pass-through. If you could turn to number 5. And this is what I'm referring to. This is the lot that's there now. Now, Amazon trucks parked there, but employees and trucks of all shapes and sizes use this as a drive-through shortcut between Domain Avenue and State Street. If you could switch to number 6. Thank you. Employees for the record company told me that the petitioner sold out of the business in this warehouse because the owner didn't want to provide health benefits for the 50 or so employees that live there. To me, that demonstrates how the company has no permanent stake in whatever industry it decides to operate in any of these buildings. And we all get it. This is a business that's here to make money. But this business is not inherently invested in my neighborhood or to the overall betterment of the city, and why should they be? So I'm sorry. I appreciate your patience with me. I'm almost done. To conclude, I understand the heritage of this proud city as a mill town, industrial base along the Merrimack, but I don't think that's what should be considered here. From your perspective, from an imagined Nashua perspective, I believe the zoning situation has somehow created, this body has to make a decision. Do you want the future growth of Nashua to serve as welcoming and safe community for people and families like Dumaine Avenue is becoming? Or, and number 7, if you would, do you want more of the same, this irrational, dangerous mixing of residential and industry all on one street, my street? I'm asking you to please vote against this project. Vote for the people, the homeowners who live on this street. And I supported you, of course, I support your previous decision to invite people and families to invest and live on Dumaine Avenue. And so for the interest of safety of all of us, please reject this further warehousing of Dumaine Avenue. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other member of the audience wishing to speak in opposition? Certainly, go right ahead.
So, good evening. My name is Leonard Walke. I live in 7 Dumaine Avenue, one of the new condos there in that area. A couple concerns. We just learned about this project. We just moved there 3-4 months ago. Love the area. Very concerning about that mixture between a commercial area and a residential area so close. By where we love, where we live, we think it's a very nice area. However, it's very concerning for us that that area is going to keep growing with vans driving in and out. To give you guys a reference, just if you happen to drive by around 11, 10 o'clock in the morning where Dumaine Avenue starts turning into Deerwood Drive, people that works in those buildings are actually parking there where they're not supposed to park. I was almost hit by 2 Amazon vans because people are parking their personal cars there. So if we add more people to work in that area, where are they going to park? I didn't hear from that part. The traffic study talks about Amherst Street. It doesn't talk about Dumaine Avenue. It doesn't talk about Deerwood. All the vans come through Deerwood Drive, go through Dumaine Avenue and go in there. That's the way all those residents, including myself, I have to go down through Dumaine, go into Deerwood Drive to get the traffic light so I can go west. I work in Milford. So every time I have to go that way, I go to the traffic light. I get usually minivans, vans. It's an Amazon warehouse. So it's not only vans. They have cars that come in and pick up. They have the truck. There is a big concern for me. Why did we approve residential areas together with commercial areas that are gonna, for sure, lower the price of our house? I bought a house there. I want to stay there. We love the house. My wife just moved from Peru about a year ago. We love that area, but it's a very high concern for me. That traffic study, I'm sorry, that's a joke. Plain and simple. I don't see the seriousness of that traffic study, and I know we don't want to make a big traffic study for a small commercial area, but there is a lot of trucks there. And they don't care if it's 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, or 11 o'clock in the morning, or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Traffic is going back and forth. So let's add one more warehouse there. It's Amazon. They don't pick at certain hours from 10 to 2 or from 10 to 5. They pick up all day long. So it's a very high concern for me. They don't go through State Street to come into that warehouse. They come through Dumaine or they come through Deerwood Drive. So we add more, that's going to be a concern. And again, my biggest concern is that turn in Dumaine Avenue. The associates, the people are parking their personal cars there. Nothing is being done about the parking lot. They have a big area there. They are parking in there. So let's add more commercial people. Let's add more people working in there. There's going to be an accident there. There is going to be an accident there. So yes, we are opposed because we feel that that project is going to continue decreasing the area. And let's be honest, they have 7 Dumaine Avenue. I think it's 31 condos. They're planning to build more. You have a lot of traffic that needs to go through Deerwood Drive in order to go west. But now we're going to hit a lot more traffic. So a lot of concern, oppose. And then again, I do think that the traffic study is not correct. It's not reflecting what really is going on there. Thank you.
Thank you. Any member of the audience? No? Wish to speak in favor? No? All right. I'll provide the applicant's representative an opportunity to respond. I heard a number of questions about traffic, potentially hours of operation, if you could add some clarity on that.
Just to clarify, I know they're talking about all of the access ways and traffic and Amazon coming out onto Domain. The existing lot 170, only has one access out onto State Street, which is where the traffic goes from the existing warehouse. We are proposing a connection into that lot 145 parking lot, and then the new parking lot above. So most of this traffic, Amazon traffic and whatnot, is not coming from 170 State Street. 170 State Street is a warehouse, data management, data destruction. And the new project that we're proposing is a continuation of the same. Steve Pernow, who's a professional engineer, and did a traffic study and submitted it to the city with peak hour traffic based on a warehouse, they're very low. So as far as the traffic from lot 170, I don't know anything about that Amazon site. This is for Julie. As far, the site, we're meeting all the setbacks. I know it's right across from your yard, your house. There is a house that's going to get torn down there. The building's going to be matching. Our proposal is to match the existing building. What else? We do meet all the setbacks. We did do a traffic study. Most of the traffic on Domain currently is from lot 170. As far as Leonard at 7, again, the traffic is the same. We're data management, the peak hour traffic is entering is 16 vehicles total, exiting is 18. Weekday AM peaks are only 3 cars, and weekday PM peaks are only 3 cars, because it's very, very minor use. There are, 60 parking spots on site, and most of them were there already. We're only adding a few extras. So, any other questions?
Mr. Leclerc, please.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand the interface between the two lots a little bit better, I guess. So
if you look at the second
I can see on your
sheet,
plan.
there is a connection we're putting a connection between our parking lot
Yeah.
and their parking lot down on the south end.
Why is that?
It was at the request of the owner,
Which owner?
so traffic can come in.
Your owner or the owner
The
next door?
the owner of the project.
The owner of the project. I mean, I can see how that particular connection can create a pass-through.
It could, but again, this site generates very little traffic.
Agreed. I'm just, thinking of the situation that exists today. Is that pass-through creating an additional potential issue? I mean, I tend to agree, obviously if all the traffic from your site is going to State Street and going out that way, it has nothing to do with the Domain traffic. Albeit, maybe it is an issue, but it's not this particular site. But I guess I'm a little bit concerned about why there's a pass-through, unless the fire department or somebody else asks for it. But I think in those scenarios, we usually have them gated or something, so.
I think, I do know we have to provide turn radiuses for the fire department for the access so they can get down there and through.
Mr. Chairman?
Oh, yes, Mr. Hirsch, please.
Quick question. How many parking spaces are going to be on the lot when you get done with all this?
On
It's a
the
little unclear to me.
entire lot, there are, I believe it's 61 spaces.
How many employees does your client have working there?
The building, he has a small office in each unit, in each building, and probably 4 or 5 employees.
Right. What are you going to do with the excess parking?
I don't know what he's going to do.
The concern I have is parking in that area is in tremendous demand.
Yep.
Amazon, people here are moving, all over the place, are looking for spaces. I wonder if there won't be a tremendous amount of traffic from whoever uses the balance of the parking lot. I'm assuming that you're going to have like another 50 vehicles in there. Is that realistic, to you potentially count another 50 vehicles beyond what the employee count in the building would require?
I don't know what his plan is.
So, do we have any control over what happens with the balance of that parking? Can they literally turn that into a fee parking lot, basically? Yes. Sam, I don't know, maybe you could speak to it. I have something I haven't dealt with before, but I'm familiar with that area.
Sure. Right. So I believe that 23 Domain, which is lot 145, so where that connection is, they're under common ownership, and Mr. Morgan owns both entities. So I would assume that it is feasible for him to, essentially grant his entities cross-access and parking rights on either lot, and obviously knowing the nature of Amazon, the volume of vehicles and the demand for a large fleet to fulfill orders, it could be a reasonable assumption that there might be some cross-parking.
If that's the case, does the traffic study reflect that potential?
I think that's a fair ask.
On Domain, I'm thinking of Domain, which is, largely residential at this point. And it's apparently, I don't think it's that wide a street either, as I recall. State Street I'm familiar with.
Yes.
But I'm not that familiar with Domain.
It's not wide.
I'm sorry?
It isn't wide.
Yeah, so, but there's also excess land there, I believe, beyond the parking. And what's going to happen with that? Is that just going to be landscaped? It's hard for me to read the plan, maybe it's my problem.
Yeah, so there is a landscape plan that's been submitted. We have made some comments on it, just to improve it slightly. But the bulk of the land really is taken up by the building addition as well as existing and additional parking proposed.
So I guess my question is, what is our?
I think Larry was still.
I'm sorry, I'm just trying to follow through on the whole thought process. It sounds like we're opening things up to a lot more density of vehicles and all in that area, which isn't reflected in what we've seen. We don't know what he's going to do. And like I say, there is a tremendous demand from a real estate point of view for parking in that vicinity.
Yeah, and I do have a little bit of pause around the details of the traffic study, and I would defer to Engineer Hudson in regards to what that scope really needs to capture. But the study really does reflect traffic volumes relying on DOT counters on Amherst Street. There's no data reflected in the study, and granted, this isn't a full-blown study, this is just a traffic impact report, but there are no traffic counts on Domain, so we don't actually know what existing volumes on Domain are. So very hard to make a judgment call as to what might actually increase. Obviously, they're using ITE data for a warehouse, which is pretty standard. We don't know if Amazon is going to be taking over this space as well. It looks like high bay storage that could be possible. Amazon versus maybe your traditional ITE warehouse use, I think you're going to see very different trip generation numbers.
Well, I'm assuming it's Amazon or someone else, the spaces will be rented out to whoever in the marketplace. There are a lot of people out there looking for parking right now. Is there any way we can restrict the use of the lot? I don't think there is.
We could try exploring very creative conditions, but it's going to come down to enforcement, and I think that's going to be nearly impossible.
Good point. Thank you.
Alderman Clee?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. what my colleague to the right has brought up was exactly what I had written here. I was quite concerned about the parking and the potential of what could be there, and my colleague to the left actually had brought some things up too, and I had written down a question here: will they be accessing Domain? And I think the answer to it is yes. So my concern is, knowing that Amazon is already going through Domain to Deerwood and doing that, there are too many questions here for me to be able to give a positive thumbs up to this project. I think that it's not ready for prime time. I think that we have issues. I don't want to say that there's a plot afoot, but with this few employees and this many parking spaces, I think there's a plot afoot. I think that there is a plan ahead that we don't know about. And I have concerns, and I always do look towards residents. I want to encourage business coming into Nashua. I want to grow business, but I have to look at residents. I have to look at their quality of life. I have to look at the investment that they've put into their property, and I think this will lessen their investment. I think this, and I know I'm preaching here, and I apologize for that, but both of my colleagues brought up points that I wanted to speak to, so there are too many concerns, and my gut is telling me something is wrong here, so thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Leclerc?
Yeah, I mean, there's some concerns. I actually think there might be some opportunities, if this is the same owner on both sides, to actually maybe improve the plan to reduce the access to Domain and direct it more, even if they were shared, but if it was more directed to State. And I mean, State is all industrial, that entire block, so there could be some, I guess my thought would be to kind of table this, give the applicant an opportunity to bring this back, our comments and discussions back to the owner, and to look at this a little more holistically with both properties, understand the concerns about traffic and mitigation at the Domain road, and maybe explore opportunities to actually even redirect some of the traffic from the adjacent site through the State Street, and I think that might actually solve both. It becomes a little bit of a win-win if there's a reduction in the Domain traffic and redirection in that way. So I do think there's more opportunities here that could help, could help sort of both sides of the issue here. So I'd be in favor if the applicant seems to be nodding that this to me, it could go another round of improvement based on testimony
Based
and
on
what you've heard here.
you guys' input
and come back maybe the next meeting with some of this stuff thought through a little more. In particular, being very specific about the use of the new square footage and the traffic flow and intended and the relationship with the adjacent.
Mr. Hirsch.
So are you thinking of actually restricting access so there wouldn't be access on Domain?
I'm
Is that what your
not
thought is?
really saying anything other than I think there are opportunities that could be explored if this is a set, if these two sites are going to work together a little bit. And it's not uncommon, right? I mean, we work with adjacent sites all the time and adjust flows. And if it's one owner, the opportunities are actually way more than if it's two owners. So I think there's more that could be done with this.
Again, Alderman Cleat.
Just a quick question, and probably to Sam, and I know we touched on it, but even if we do come back and we did say, we want to put a condition on that you can't use this to put, rent it out, a pay for space kind of type thing. I don't really see that we can do that, because we would be restricting their use of their personal property. So to be honest with you, I'm not sure that that's really something we could do. Is that correct? Just to be straight here.
Yes, I would agree with that, and it seems like what we're really trying to get at is minimizing cut-through traffic, keeping the traffic, the industrial traffic in that nature on State Street,
Right.
and trying to eliminate that from Dumaine. And it seems like eliminating that parking lot connection, doing a little access management on Dumaine would actually solve that problem. So rather than trying to dictate how the owner uses their parking lots, through site design, you're able to basically force the result that you're looking for.
And I guess sort of taking the pulse there, rather than us going through every possible machination tonight.
Right.
I would recommend coming back, talking to staff, talking to engineering. I would agree with the general tone, though. I think there's some possibilities here to perhaps get something that works a little bit better. With that, if obviously if there's more specific questions, but I think we're going towards.
I'll make that motion, but I don't want to make it until everybody talks, because I can't, once I make that motion, we can't talk anymore, so.
Thank you. Mr. Hudson, please.
Yeah, well, I just want to quickly address the traffic. I think based upon the testimony and other issues in the area, I think it does warrant some additional investigation. I think although the methodology that Mr. Purnall used, I think is sound in terms of the proposed warehouse use and probably accurately reflects estimated trip generation for that portion. If this is to be used for other things, then certainly the study doesn't reflect that. So I don't take issue with what was done, but I think it probably does warrant additional investigation. So I would encourage, I would echo the desire to table and have the applicant work with staff, and we can figure out, at least have the application accurately reflect what's proposed. I can see, if there's parking all over the neighborhood and now they can park on the site where they're working, maybe, or close to it, maybe that's a benefit. I don't necessarily object to the shared parking if collectively those two properties need that parking and it enables it to be centralized on the site versus all over the neighborhood. So I don't know that that's necessarily a bad thing, but I do, based upon the testimony, the cut through traffic and other things, I do think it warrants additional look. So.
Yeah, I'll just add, there are other, you're professional, you could make certain things entrances not in only, certain things are exits only, that cuts flows in half. We can design connections such that they really aren't possible for tractor trailers to use, but a car can, and there are things like that. So I think there's a lot of opportunities to improve the plan, that, and I would also add, as you're exploring the opportunities, to really take a look at the buffer between the new facility and Dumaine, and is there more you could do at that buffer to create more of a visual improvement there. So understanding, you got setbacks and stuff, but buffer treatment is definitely something this board is always interested in looking at. So, sorry, we're not open to the public testimony at this point. So.
All right. There's no other specific questions or comments from the board. I think we're willing to take a motion to table this. Sam, does that need to be to a date certain, or?
Yes, please.
September 5th is our next meeting.
I'll make that motion.
We could always do it to the 5th, and then if something changes, we could adjust. I don't know if we can necessarily.
My expectation, it'll take a little time to work through this issue, because it's likely additional traffic information is going to need to be collected and analyzed, and that sort of thing. So it'll take, a month is not unreasonable to expect that it'll take that long to deal with.
So do we want September 19th?
I think we can move to the 5th, and then if they're not ready, then we can move to the 19th,
Okay.
I will make the motion to table until the meeting of September 5th.
All right. Motion by Alderman Klee. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Hirsch. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Last item on the agenda, review of tentative agenda to determine developments of regional impact. Has any member of the board had an opportunity to review the project list and is willing to make a recommendation as to projects of regional impact?
I mean, I'll make a motion.
Certainly, Scott, go right ahead.
Yeah, so I've reviewed the technical review meeting notes from August 5th, that there are no projects in our tentative agenda that have regional impact.
All right, motion by Mr. Leclerc. Is there a second? Second, Mr. Hirsch. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. And we are adjourned at...
Discussion items.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Please, Mr. Hudson, discuss.
Perhaps it's inappropriate, perhaps you should recuse yourself, but I just want to revisit, there was some quick discussion about maybe a special meeting, and I just wanted a chance to talk about that, I guess.
I think as long as you don't talk about the case, you just talk about a special meeting for any case.
Okay.
My general thoughts, and if somebody who has been involved in the project, I don't think that warrants the level of asking for a special meeting. They're within their 1 year approval from September 7th of last year, so assuming I was not associated with it, I think waiting until September 5th is not. But
Yeah, I would echo that, I think, and secondly, I don't think it'll delay any planned opening timeframes, because we're just waiving something that would have to be done, that we're gonna waive that it needs to be done by a certain time, so I don't understand the necessity for a special meeting.
I appreciate any applicant's desire to be heard faster.
Right. I don't mind them asking.
And I think the time I've been on the board, there's been very specific reasons for having a special or additional meeting. I mean, a couple times it was just straight up overflow. We had more cases than we can handle on a single night, and then for others, I think it was to address one or two specific projects. Costco, PJ's would have been a separate standalone meeting one night, but
Yeah, to that point, question for staff, is there a sufficient caseload that you feel adding a second meeting in August would be warranted?
No.
Thank you. Move to adjourn.
Scott, you want to chime in on that?
I'll second the adjourn.
All right, well, who am I to argue? All those in favor?
Aye.
And we are adjourned at 10:27.